Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool. I've come up with this sort of theory idea of a thing. You know, you hear people talk about, it's like, people use phones all the time, and like everyone's like, hunch our phones, so bad posture. People are addicted to the phones, and TikToks, I mean, it's a further extension of the phone. Internet, depression comes from internet. All these different problems currently in society. So, I did some research last night, and you know lobotomies?
Yeah.
So they were popular for about 30 years. And the biggest proponent of lobotomies, this guy's like, it's a great thing, everyone should be doing it, like, get your wife a lobotomy, get yourself a lobotomy, like, it'll help your problems. He has a record of completing something like 300 lobotomies in a day.
Wow.
Do you know why lobotomies stopped?
Okay, I'm going to make a completely cynical and probably wrong guess, okay? There was a technology that was developed that made it basically free to do a lobotomy.
Yes.
Really?
It's because psychomeds were easier, less invasive, and didn't have a spike going to your head.
Oh, well, okay.
But the psychomeds that were developed, some of them were, I can't remember his name, I remember it this morning. It's basically, if you had a really dangerous prisoner or a really dangerous patient, you'd give them an injection of it, and it killed their soul. It made them dead, basically. And so, like, those medicines, and it's like, oh, your wife got problems, well, give her the psychomedication instead. And so it fell out of fashion because there's better treatments.
Xanax?
It's like Xanax, but it's like Xanax with something else.
Yeah. There's also purity blockers they use on certain prisoners. Yeah. Basically, the same thing, or similar, which is basically a hormone dampener.
Yeah. And
it just makes you kind of listless and soulless, yeah.
Yeah, no, this stuff was like, it turns you into a vegetable. They're basically like sitting there dribbling.
Right.
So
it wasn't because of like the nail gun for lobotomies was invented.
But it fell out of fashion, then it got banned much later. And it's like, this is kind of a bad idea. So laudanum, we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Amazing drug.
Yeah.
It's still used today, actually, diarrhea cases.
Diarrhea?
Yeah, if someone has chronic diarrhea, it's like basically the last ditch effort is to give them laudanum because it can treat it.
So we've tried rice, we've tried bread, we've tried
potatoes.
We've tried potatoes, we've given extra water. Nothing's working. Have you tried heroin? Wait, what? Heroin? Oh, don't worry. This heroin's mixed with cocaine.
And alcohol. It's actually very important to mix the opium with alcohol. It's an alcohol heroin combination. But anyways, like, laudanum did everything. Like, it is amazing stuff. It fell out of use for two reasons. One, we actually developed better drugs. And the other is because it's an addictive substance and we basically want to stop using opium.
And you probably can't patent it as easily.
No, you cannot at all.
I don't trust pharmacies any... Well, I've never had much trust for them, but the more I learn about why certain drugs aren't used, like, for example, if someone's sick... Now, I'm not saying you should do this, right? But it seems, to my mind, to make sense to be like, all right, you're sick, we can't figure it out, here's ivermectin, here's vitamin D, just take 2 of these a day for a week, and you know, maybe here's a penicillin tablet as well. One of these three things cure like 90% of things, so we'll just give you all 3 and we'll see what happens.
Honestly, though, someone's sick, we don't know what it is. Here, take a laudanum for a week.
You don't care.
It's not only you won't care, it will make you better. It is a miracle drug. It's just has a lot of other problems with it.
Now, penicillin, yeah. I wouldn't actually recommend. Yeah. Just like penicillin, it's fairly harmless and it cures like a huge amount of stuff. But the problem is if you prescribe it for everything, it will stop working.
Yeah.
So that one. But the other two, ivermectin, vitamin D, just bam, bam.
Yeah. Anyways, so
stuff it full of people.
Another technology.
Put it in cereal. Well, they do.
So X-rays. So when X-rays first came around, nurses every single morning, you want to make sure your X-ray machine's working. So you'd have your nurse stick her hand in it, or his hand in, do a little flash on their hand, and so their right hand, left hand, whatever. It's like, oh, it's working today.
Yeah.
So these people have like melted hands now, like the ones that are still alive. One of the guys, he was amazing at.
Couldn't you stick like a piece of wood in a pillow?
They didn't know. They didn't know it was harmful.
But still, you're like, okay, here's a high energy thing. Here's a piece of wood and a pillow. We'll just stick that in.
A guy lost both his hands. He had them amputated. He was like a doctor who worked on X-rays. So they amputated both his hands because they had such aggressive cancer. Still ended up dying from blood cancer. And so we just didn't know, though, at that time.
Man, that's depressing. Yeah.
And pilots, right? So people go up in airplanes. We still don't really address this, but flight crews, flight attendants, pilots suffer from higher amounts of skin cancer, breast cancer, blood and fat-based cancers.
Yeah, because the radiation's way higher up there.
Yeah. And so, but that's a sacrifice basically we're willing to make.
Maybe they don't think about it too much.
Don't think about it as much. But so that's slightly different off the topic of why I'm getting at here. So morning sickness, the drug that fluoride.
Yeah.
You take it for morning sickness. Oh shoot, a whole generation screwed.
Yeah.
Like a huge group of babies is just messed up. So that was a fluoride. And not vermiculite, asbestos. Vermiculite's a different story. Vermiculite's actually a safe substance.
Asbestos, fireproof, stops house fires.
Asbestos is amazing. So
it's a stone that you can weave.
Yeah,
it's flexible.
So there was pajamas made for children.
Yeah,
because you have your kid, they want to snuggle up next to the heater, right? But their clothing gets onto like your oil heater.
Yeah,
the clothing heats up, it catches fire. Your child's pajamas catch fire. So give them asbestos pajamas. They're actually 100% safe until they're washed. Yeah. Then it releases the fibers.
You wouldn't have to wash asbestos pajamas.
Well, it's the kid wets the bed.
No, but you could burn them.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying the kid wets while wearing them, or they chew on it, like suck on their own clothing.
Right, yeah. Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But in theory, like an asbestos coat, you could just like Marco Polo.
Yeah.
Toss it in the fire to clean it.
Yeah, but so asbestos has problems. Vermiculite, amazing substance actually.
What is it?
So it's a fire retardant rock. It's like a lot like asbestos, but it's not dangerous. And it's an insulator. And so what you did, this was in Canada is used a lot, is your ceiling insulation, you would have about a layer of like half an inch of vermiculite all along your roof. So if your house caught fire, the vermiculite would collapse and mitigate the fire damage and give more time for the fire to be put out.
Right.
Act as an insulator. Unfortunately, the majority of vermiculite in the world comes from British Columbia. And that mine has veins of asbestos running through it. And so the majority of vermiculite that's being used is tainted with asbestos.
Right.
But so that's one of the things I have to check for is vermiculite, if there's up there or not.
Right.
Because it's probably fine, just don't disturb it, and you can get tested, and it might actually just be perfectly safe. But so lead pipes, huge amount of problems we discovered, because lead's awesome. It's like really malleable, you can work with it, bend it, it's got a good weight.
It's colorful, you can make great pigments out of it.
Mercury is really good. Uranium.
Amazing. Mercury's a temperature sensitive conductor, so it's perfect for like, switches and stuff.
Uranium glass.
Bulletproof, I guess?
Bulletproof, glows, is very pretty. Uranium, non-depleted uranium components. It wasn't used so much because we only started developing it. But I watched this video of, it was a uranium ball in a hydraulic press. And know how usually like hydraulic press is, it goes and goes and eventually it wins? The uranium ball won. The press got destroyed.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so it's this amazing stuff. Carbon fiber. Oh, carbon fiber was the big thing. As bad as asbestos.
Yeah.
Because it's a fibrous material. But it's like super cool.
And if you've ever gotten fiberglass, similar.
Fiberglass. Fiberglass is awesome. Fiberglass is really cool. It's recycled glass, and you're weaving glass.
But then you like run your hand along it, and you get a million little cuts.
Yeah, and slivers of it because it's little fibers of it.
But carbon fiber, you can also get slivers from.
Yeah,
and it hurts like crazy.
Oh yeah,
because it does. I think it's worse than fiberglass. It's like,
Yeah, so we have all these technologies and these things we've developed
that would turn out to not be so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, technological development. So that's one thing. In the 60s, I believe it was, there was a craze in psychology of hypnotherapy, of bringing up people's memory, also doing therapy of like trying to remember and bring things up. Someone would go to a therapist and say...
Like repressed memories?
Yeah, repressed memories. So there's a craze about it. Someone would go to a therapist and say, I have anxiety. I have agoraphobia. I have this problem with my marriage life. Or it could be even smaller than those. And then they would be accusing their father or mother of sexual assault.
Yeah.
And it was the planting of false memories.
Yeah.
And it was this very easy influence to do. There's been massive studies on false memories. This was a TED Talk police case where, so this woman was raped, and she gave a quick description to the police of what happened. And so they went out and took pictures of different people. This guy came out of the bar with his fiancée, and the police said, "Oh, your vehicle looks like his. You look a bit like the description we got." So they took a picture of him. She was given a list of the pictures. That one looks the closest. And she pointed to that guy.
Yeah.
In court, she said, "That's the man who raped me. Without a doubt, that's the man who raped me."
Yeah.
So he went to prison. Then, and he's like just getting married, a whole bunch of things. So his life was destroyed by that. The person who actually raped her basically confesses he did it. This guy comes out of prison, and he's just super angry about this. And he's just trying to figure out a way to get back at the system, get back at her, because his life was destroyed. And so his want for revenge, basically his wife left him because he was messed up in the head. And the guy dies of a heart attack because he's so stressed out at like age 34 or something. Jeez. But he was trying to like pursue this lawsuit. And so this person, this memory doctor who's at TED Talks talking about her whole study is based around memory. Like, she's a memory doctor. It's like, "Oh, can you help me remember this thing?" No, that's not my field of forgetfulness. Mine's based on memory.
There was actually a time, this was the 80s, I think, not the 60s, but there was a time where, maybe 70s as well.
I think 70s was... Yeah.
They would get witnesses to crimes, and they would hypnotize them to try to recall more details about the suspects. And I wonder...
Well, so in France... No, it's in Belgium. Witnesses aren't even allowed to hear each other or know of each other, because they might say a detail which might trigger someone else to come up. So there's like no witness corroboration in Belgium.
Right.
But so she's talking about there's a study done you basically make people, so you go to their parents and you have their parents basically tell this person, "Oh yeah, you were really sick this one time, you ate, let's say asparagus."
Yeah.
And so asparagus becomes gross because they have that associated memory. And then there's a different psychological trick which can be done to children, which was the study has done, which is having really, like, remember...
You had this last time, you loved it.
Yeah, you loved this thing. And so giving them the false memory. And so there's these whole things about false memories.
Yeah.
And so, like, the psychological thing of false memories and people being influenced. So there's that level there of, like, just hearing things and doing things influence. Like, talking to someone for a bit can change your influence and have effects on you. So you have technology, you have false memories. Yeah, you have these false memories. So you have the social aspect, like psychologists can mess with people positively or negatively.
Right, so what you're saying is there was this great new psychological breakthrough.
Yeah.
Turned out it was totally bunk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There's also phrenology. You could determine someone's personality by the lumps on their head. Yeah.
And there's a lot of psychological problems that come up, like psychologists making you think that you're something that you aren't, or like confirming something.
Yeah.
So medicine as well, a different field of side of medicine is like people can be different. And so not every treatment fixes all things, like your liver's on the wrong side or whatever. That's a minor thing.
Or you're allergic to whatever.
Yeah. So I talked about this before on podcast, but my sleep problems, opening the window fixed that.
Yeah.
Now, stupidly, but I basically, around Christmas time, I was having a lot of trouble with my diet of eating things. And so I said, all right, give me a year, a month, a week, and a day of like sticking to your diet. And the year was, just going over New Year. Yeah. So it's a symbolic thing. Once you surpass that, then I'll give you like 3 days if you can eat out at these restaurants and have these things you haven't had for a bit. I was very much in the dumps around Christmas time. I was having a lot of issues. But so that was a deal I made to myself. And so it's basically about 4 days after I started having my window open, I did that. And I have a few food addiction problem. If I have foods I like fall into a cascade, cause different kinds of depression, different kinds of listlessness. You know that thing where you just can't sit still? Like apathasia or whatever? So that happens when I'm coming off eating sugar and food. I get that feeling. Yeah. And so basically the past month I've been battling with trying to fix that again. And I've come to I cannot make a deal with myself of, for not eating food, I'll give you the reward of the poison. Yeah. If you don't drink poison for a week, you can drink poison for a day. Yeah. Because then, so one problem there's another stack mental problem. So there's these issues there.
The reward for making yourself feel good is feeling bad.
Yeah. No, and so I'm recovering from that again. And it's a very hard mental recovery and physical recovery, both. And so there's like individual sensitivities and problems mentally with food we eat. So, but then, pesticides.
Yeah.
There's this great thing of, so we have a field of plants, and we have these weeds that grow. So we have these guys that go in these full hazmat suits, and we have this spray, which is death. Anything that gets coated in it will die.
Yeah.
Plant, human, bug, whatever. And that's why they're in the suits. So these guys go along, they spray these things. But it's really inconvenient. These guys are expensive. It takes them a long time. However, while we're spraying it, we've noticed that there's this certain plant that grows on the edge of the fields. It's not an invasive species, but it doesn't die because of the spray. Or, for some reason, there's this fish that's immune to this poison. So let's take this bit of the fish that makes it immune to this poison and put it into our wheat. And then instead of having these groups of guys in hazmat suits go around and individually kill the weeds, we fly a plane over the whole field and just dump ridiculous amounts of this chemical on the field, and it kills everything but the plants because we've made them immune to the poison.
Yeah.
So one, whatever you've done to the plant to make it immune will change the plant in some way.
Yeah.
And might not be good for people. Also, even if you wash the plants really good afterwards and do all the things, they're going to absorb a certain amount of this poison. There's going to be no diversity in that area. There's a genetic problem with these plants now. They start inbreeding the plants. So there's this thing, we can produce ridiculous amounts of crops by doing this method. But it might have consequences. And so but the consequences are small. It's worth it. Because we get a lot of food, and it makes people 0.01% sicker.
Well, there's actually no studies that support pesticides having any negative effect on people whatsoever, as far as I'm aware. So it makes people, as far as we know, not sicker at all.
Yeah, or it's so minute we can't even measure it.
Yeah.
So, we have car exhaust, and you get a little bit, you feel gross. Yeah. But it disperses throughout the environment, so you're fine. We have aluminum environment, and then we have aluminum adjuvants and ejections.
Aluminum?
Yes. Aluminium.
Aluminium, yeah.
Yeah. You have them in your shots, and they're adjuvant. And the levels are safe there. And maybe even with the environmental things, it's safe still. It's safe. And electric radiation from the computer, your internet radiation, even the radiation of having an electronic device, it's safe. High amounts of radiation, or electromagnetic radiation, are dangerous. They can cook you, they can scramble your brain, they can make neurons fire weirdly, they can make DNA split into pieces, they can shatter or shred DNA. But small amounts is safe. So, sound everywhere, just the hum, the sound. You can learn to deal with that sound. There's the constant. You can learn to deal with it. Repeated trauma of touching a phone, you've experienced with your fingers, of that blunt force trauma. Yeah. The repetitive strain, you said, the stress is there, and so there's some other component going on. So we have these things that we know were definitively bad. We have these things we're uncertain about, we don't know if electromagnetic radiation is bad or not, but it seems pretty safe. So we have this thing. But then we have...
Safe as x-rays.
We have a million background things, basically. And maybe if it was in a vacuum, it would be fine. But we're experiencing a ton of them all at once. And even with that, let's say even with all of that, it puts one negative point on us. So it's bearable. You can live with it. I was thinking about all right, I make a medicine, right? You take this medicine, it increases your IQ by 2 standard deviations. Now, it has a 0.001% of making your arms fall off. Yeah. And every 10th time you take it, you'll get a nosebleed. But everyone would take it.
Most people.
Yeah, a lot of people would take it. It's sure, your arms have fallen off. It doesn't kill you. It's just your arms falling off. And you have 2 standard deviations of IQ increase. That's huge. Yeah. And so it's worth the risk for a lot of people. It's worth the cost. And so even if everything we have going on, we're not even looking into the cost, but it's very worth it to us.
I mean, I'm suspect of aspirin. Yeah. And aspirin's one of the safest drugs out there, and it reduces heart problems and cancer risk. So yeah. So there's always going to be some people that are just paranoid out of their minds. But
But then we have these problems we know that exist, and we still let them happen. We don't deal with them. So attention span destruction. With TikTok has been shown to destroy attention span. Same with YouTube Shorts. And there's this weird thing with attention span. It's oh yeah, I have a ruined attention span, haha. Or, oh, kids these days have no attention span. Or even oh, they have this thing. And it's sort of dismissal, like it's bad, it's not as good, but it's okay. But it's actually really bad having a destroyed attention span or damaged attention span.
Is TikTok and YouTube Shorts, I don't know how you would test it, but is it actually damaging attention, or is it that people with low attentions are viewing them more, or is it that addictive behaviors reduce attention and they are an addictive behavior? I guess that would look the same.
You can measure the reduction in attention span since the advent of TikTok, and people who use TikTok a lot, you can basically measure their attention span, and it's lower than what it was in other people of their group. Like,
right, but the people that are using TikTok might be self-selecting as people with bad attention spans. Or people...
Yeah, but if you go back to older generations and look at the average attention span, basically, and do comparative things. So there is the self-selection, but even with that.
Yeah.
And you can recover your attention span if you stop using TikTok.
But it could also be some other new thing, like SpaceX satellites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Internet gas.
Yeah.
But so there is like this mission of, haha, I should go touch grass or whatever.
Yeah.
But there might actually be a much greater problem there. Because one of the insane things about the internet, this is a bit of a pun actually, is so there has been studies for ages, which is if you look at psychological patients of any sort, or criminal delinquency or criminal groups, or even like homelessness or people who have troubles getting a home, you don't want to concentrate the population of them together. You really don't. So with prisons is a problem though, because prisons is a punishment as well as a treatment. It's like a weird, we can't decide. And so you have to concentrate them because they're easier to contain, and you have a bunch of guards and you can make a fortress to contain them. But prisons have the problem of people who go in become more criminal the longer they're in the prison, because there's criminals everywhere and they're treated like that. So this whole thing. The same thing, if you look at trying to house people who have trouble with housing homeless people, is if you make one big shelter, like let's say you have a mega shelter that has like all the homeless people in one place, there's going to be so many problems there. The studies that I've looked at is you want to disperse them throughout a population, integrate them into communities, and give them homes and responsibility within that.
If you want them to be better people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that might not be the reason you want them in prison. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about homelessness, not prisons.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't want a homeless shelter. You want...
Yeah, you don't want a homeless shelter. You want a bunch of small ones and like integrated groups and like little family units.
Right. You want them to to feel as though they themselves are a person doing something rather than I am a homeless person.
Yes.
So I will do drugs and be in...
Yeah, and you don't want them around other homeless people because their negative behaviors will feed off each other. Now, there's a problem with delinquent youth, which is one delinquent youth will make other youths delinquents.
Yeah.
I've been mispronouncing the word, I know, but...
You're like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
The youth.
It wasn't youth that time problem, it was delinquent.
Oh, I'm not even going to try now.
Yeah.
Delinquent.
Yeah. Anyways, so you don't want to concentrate their population, but you also don't want to give them with peak performers. You want to isolate and work on them with the adults, actually, is how you deal with that.
Right.
And then integrate them into better groups. But then anemic patients and bulimic patients, you don't want to concentrate them together. It's one of the huge problems with the big house, the men with white coats, the asylum, is people become more insane in asylums because they'd be around other insane people and they'd feed off each other's delusions and it would concentrate it.
Wasn't there this is interesting. There was a problem with police officers, wasn't it? Where if you had partner, you were more likely to take risks because you didn't really want to, like, it's like, can we drive across that train tracks to chase them? Come on, man, you can do it. And just sort of...
It might have been a case.
I think that might have been something, yeah.
Yeah, and so, again, with, like, the girls, the social contagion of bulimia.
Yeah.
And then more and more of them keep starving. So you want to separate them in a hospital. So what I'm getting at here is, there's been studies, basically, of negative human behavior. If you concentrate it, the group feeds off each other. You get this background loop. And they become worse. And people who might have been on the fringe of that, if they get exposed to the group, they get black holed into it. So you take the internet. I have a problem, let's say. So I go to the internet to look at my problem. I find a group of people who all have this problem. I become a part of this group of people. I have access. Like, these people might be spread out across the world. And they might have had a problem, which is really niche and really weird and basically has no effect on your life. Like foot tattoos, okay?
Yeah.
Like, there's some problem with foot tattoos. I don't know what it is, but there's some problem. No one has them. You're like one guy in a town has this problem, but it's not going to affect you at all. And let's say it's not a fetish, you know it's a problem. And you go online. And then you get sort of sucked into this vortex of people with this problem. And then it actually becomes a problem that impacts your life. And so there's this thing with online, which is there's this like weird cascading problem. However, even with that, let's say you have a problem and you go online, and so it gives you like negative, out of 100, it gives you negative 50 points. But you can still survive. But then you have all this background, little things, all these little things which might be dangerous, might not. And they add on to it. And then we have another case that we don't know about. Like maybe cell phones are as bad as getting a lobotomy, or they're as bad as asbestos was.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can adapt to that, maybe you can't. But we've had so many technology developments. So many. And it's like, oh, this is a problem and no one wants to do anything. But like what I'm saying is the internet, if not used correctly, is a problem. And people recognize this. There's the self-destructive jokes about it. But no one wants to deal with it because it gives you the 2 deviations of IQ, and sure, your arms might pop off, but you know how to handle it. You staple your arms so when they pop off, it's just going to stay in place. Whatever. There's this, and then there's so many other potential problems that society is facing, like the seed oils, whatever they do, like drywall could be poisonous, basically, for all we know.
Yeah.
The insulations, it's perfectly safe. Cellulose is perfectly safe. It's ground up paper.
And the more innovations you have in rapid succession, the harder it is to isolate.
Yeah, and check for them.
If something is bad or not.
Yeah, because like medieval ages, like I develop a sword.
Yeah. Okay, we can test that.
Yeah, a sword stabby, it's dangerous. We hold it from the non-stabby end. And then it's like, all right, we're using lead pipes. We have no idea, but that's the only bad thing we developed was lead pipes and like lead paint. And like they did a bunch of ridiculously bad stuff, like the lead makeup, the mercury, the hats. And it took them a couple 100 years or 100 years sometimes to figure out what was going on. But it was like one technology they had. Whereas we have these social technologies and the memory destruction, like false memories. We have the internet technologies, we have the environmental, we have the food technology. We have so many things. And then people are saying depression spiked in 2008 among young men. And there's this one joke that was after the golden age of computer games ended. And you can actually, like, there's the golden age of computer games, then it ends 2008. Young men's depression spikes.
There's a website called What Happened in 1972.
Yeah.
And it's a collection of graphs. And in 1972, all the trends on all these graphs wildly goes off.
Obesity, like we know obesity is a problem. Everyone's obese. And it's really bad for you. It's really, really bad for you. Like, I told you about that cancer thing. There's this cancer expert doctor. And it's like, when he started, it's like, 1 in 10 people will get cancer. And so this is when he started. And then like later on, it's like, all right, 1 in 4 people will get cancer. And it's like the number has gone up this bad. It's like 1 in 3 people will get cancer. And now it's 1 in 2.
You know what's strange? There's a paradox in biology whereby the larger an animal is, the less likely it is to get cancer, even though they have more cells. So you'd think obesity really would be a safeguard against cancer. But that would mean that the obesity, well, what it could mean is either that's if your animal's at its correct healthy weight.
Yeah.
But the question is, okay, so then is obesity poisonous, or are you eating poisons to become obese?
Well, what's weird is whales seem to be immune to cancer.
No, that's the paradox. Yeah. It's that the bigger animal, like elephants rarely ever get cancer. Yeah. Mice get cancer all the time. Yeah. And it should be the other way around if you think about it in terms of cells going wrong.
Human heart is immune to cancer. Hearts don't get cancer.
They probably don't heal very well.
No, they don't at all.
Yeah.
That's the trait. That's why myocarditis is so bad.
Because you have holes in your heart and then...
They don't heal.
They don't heal, or they take like 20 years to heal, or whatever it might be. Yeah. Huh.
So that's why heart damage is really bad. If your heart gets an injury, you don't... Like, your liver, you can cut a piece off your liver, give it to someone else. That liver will then grow into a liver inside them. They can have a liver transplant, and then your liver will grow back.
Yeah, because your liver's getting abused all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Like your liver is super regenerative, so it's funny. Livers were super important for dealing with poison. Basically, like early humans, you're going to eat stuff, it's going to be sick, so it deals with toxin. So your liver would actually get pretty beat up. Alcoholics' livers get pretty beat up. But modern human, they're supposedly not eating poison anymore.
Well, like painkillers and stuff, though, are going to be going through your liver. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, you have this ultra healthy person not doing anything. Their liver is basically like this super regenerator that's probably going to give them cancer.
Right, so if you're healthy, you should have your liver removed.
Have pieces taken out of it just so it knows its place.
Yeah, you got to keep it in check.
Yeah, so, but we have like this weird thing in humanity right now, which is we can't catch up to the potential danger. But what I was getting at before point of sort of loss is the old folks saying like, oh, they use cell phones too much, or you're like listening to Joe Rogan and Dr. Phil. I was listening to this, and Dr. Phil's like, 2008, this mobile phone became super popular, and the depression started there.
Yeah,
and then someone else will go like, this thing happened in 2008, start there. Or you say, this thing happened in 1978.
72, yeah.
1972, this thing happened here. But what I've learned, what I was getting about with my own personal experience, is so I have this one problem, which is the sleeping. I need to have my window open all the time, fresh air, whatever the reason is. CO2 might be the reason, might not. It's the most concrete evidence is there's too much CO2.
Yeah.
So we'll go with that. So I had too high levels of CO2. I might have genetics, which makes it really hard for my body to scrub CO2 out. That could be the cause, because people are individuals. But anyways, so you have that, and it's just like super tired all the time. You take then my diet, how it impacts me, and we put that on there. So when I was having the CO2 exposure and the diet, those two things in combination, oh my goodness, that awful, god awful. Then I was on a proper diet, or a more proper diet, but the CO2 is still there. I can't sleep at all. And so I'm not getting headaches. I'm not getting this aphasia of can't be still, can't focus on things. I'm not getting joint pain, I'm not getting back pain, I'm not getting all these little pains. But I am so tired I can't operate. So the so tired I can't operate is gone. I can sleep now, it gives me sleep. When I go to bed and try to go to bed, I fall asleep within like 15 minutes versus taking an hour to 2 hours. But then I went change my diet, and my diet was bad again. However, the effects of the diet being bad weren't nearly as pronounced as it was when I was having that sleep thing.
Yeah.
And so, but these problems compound each other. One of the horrible things I learned about depression, one of the side effects that's being had on people, is it makes you want to binge food. That's a very common thing that depression does. Obesity causes depression. So there's a feedback loop there. But you're obese, you get depression. You have a thyroid problem that's exacerbated by your obesity.
Exacerbated, yeah.
Yeah, exacerbated. Then you go online and you have a thing for foot tattoos. And so it all like adds up, and we haven't had time to adapt to these things. And so...
And what happens as well, a very important component in that is, okay, so the foot tattoo regulations of the government are the one thing out of my control, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a loser. So it must be the thing that I can't control that's the problem.
Yeah.
And therefore the government is to blame.
That can be a part of it. But what's more is, our stepdad has explained this to me, is one of the things they look at with housing science health. Housing science health. I've been very dehydrated because I have my window open all the time.
You've gotten brain damage, clearly.
Well, it makes your brain shrink, but also when you're dehydrated, you produce a lot more saliva. And so I just
tried drinking water?
Yes.
Okay.
I drink a lot of water. It's still happening, and I probably should have drinking some more water when I got here. But my mouth is very dry right now, so I'm slurring a lot of words. I have this weird lisp right now.
Right. Anyways, housing health problems, yes.
Yeah. Is, sure, you can deal with this one thing, and usually you'd be able to handle this. So there's all these stressors on your life. You'd normally be able to handle them. But one stone goes out of the way, and so you can no longer handle those things. But you're used to handling them, so you try to keep handling them. And it adds more weight with that stone out of the way. And so they start creating problems. And so, like, one thing being out of balance can make every other small problem
so basically,
much worse.
You have this dripping tap, and it's been annoying you, and you could fix it at any point.
Yeah.
But you don't. And then you can't breathe properly. And suddenly...
That dripping tap is the end of the world.
And you can't... You can... So you were saying the stone's out of the way, and suddenly... Do you lose the ability to deal with the dripping tap on,
yes.
on a mental level, but also do you, like, you can no longer fix it physically? Like,
yeah, you can't. Your body won't be able to focus on that. You won't be able to correct it.
So it becomes...
You don't have the mental capacity anymore to even, like, register how to fix that tap.
So it then becomes another problem you can't fix.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why the whole clean your room thing, it's like start where you have power.
Yeah.
And then so that's the nice thing though, is that it works in reverse, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can at least make your room a tiny bit cleaner every day,
Yeah.
then eventually that will give you the strength to fix the leaky tap.
And one of the things I've realized, this is horrifying. I have a really weird form of PTSD. I don't know if you've experienced this at all or not. Where I have trouble starting working right now, or like committing to start doing something, because it was so hard and so terrible and so soul destroying to try to do, that I'm afraid of trying to do things right now, because I'm scared of having that experience again. It's like this mental conditioning, Pavlovian mental conditioning. So beforehand, it's like, all right, you have to do work.
Yeah.
You need money, you need to do this stuff. So like, all right, so I have to hype myself up. Okay, you can do this. I'm screaming before the battle starts.
Yeah.
So I have to hype myself up.
And it doesn't work.
Well, no, so it's like, it's barely working. So I have like this little bit left. It's like, all right, grab onto that. Use that little bit left. Push through it. I do the whole thing, and then I'm exhausted afterwards. And I can't recover. I've used that little bit up. And then I try again, and then it doesn't work like you said.
Yeah.
And so now I can do it, but I'm scared.
Yeah. And the only way to deal with that is just small compounded victories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so...
Like, okay, here's an example.
Well, I'm at the mental point right now where I'm making all these things I want to do. I'm making all these plans, but I still actually don't have the ability to follow through them. But I was at the point, I couldn't even make plans.
So I don't know if you've had this, but let's say you've got a Skyrim save file on the go.
Yeah.
You've got a Battle Brothers save file on the go. You've got your Banner Lord, your Mountain Blade save file on the go, and then you've got your second modded Mountain Blade thing on the go. You were playing a game of Crusader Kings, and then you were trying out Morrowind. You've got all these things on the go.
Yeah.
You haven't touched any of them in a month, because to do so would mean having to try to figure out halfway through an RPG where you are. Right?
Yeah.
And or you've got like your Heroes of Might and Magic, you're halfway through as well. And what you do is you just pick one and you start it, and it's hard. It's really hard. It's like, whoa. And then your mind sort of like grabs hold of it, and it integrates it, and suddenly you can start working with it. And now you've got like 6 games. They're these intimidating walls of noise. They're chaos. There is no sense to them. You've forgotten all order that they had. You don't know why you made any of the decisions you made. But you have reconfigured Heroes of Might and Magic back into your brain because you started playing that save file again. And so you go, okay, I digested that. And then you grab another one, and you're like, ah. And yeah, so they turn into like walls of noise, static, chaos. But you can actually, with the video games, I'm sure you've experienced this, you can actually dive in, and you're floundering for like an hour, and then you're like, okay, I'm back in the driver's seat. Here we go.
Yeah.
Or
so unfortunately though, because like I said, like you have that little bit you grab onto, and then it's gone. That takes a really long time to come back. A really long time.
And yes, small victories, you know.
Yeah.
You just make your desk a little bit tidier.
Yeah, but less about me and back to the larger, broader thing. So people will point to one societal ill, one societal problem, known or unknown. Conspiracy theory. Seed oils, they're poisoning us, making everyone fat.
Yeah.
Known problem of loss of social interaction due to social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
Irony that statement is.
Yeah.
So point to that. That's the problem. The cell phone itself, instant information, instant gratification. The video game is super addictive. Or again, back to the serious theory, the 5G towers are irradiating our brains.
Yeah.
Or food's poisoning us because we're just not meant to eat like this. Let's go back 1,000 years just for a second. Not thousands, like hundreds of thousands, potentially. Like Star of Humans, the Cultural Revolution, what was that, 40,000 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get the sickle.
Yeah.
Men and women can use a sickle.
Agricultural Revolution.
Agriculture, yeah. Men and women can use the sickle to harvest grain. So we take hunter-gatherers out of hunting. So they can hunt, they can eat meat, they chew it, it makes their jaws nice and strong. It's good for their bodies, it's how they evolved, it's what you eat. The random chaos of the universe made it so you eat meat and like a few tubers and nuts.
Yeah.
You take this person, you give them a scythe, they plant field, they harvest it. They can get enough grain to feed themselves and their family for a year. And it takes them like half a year to do that. This is exaggerations on, it takes you way less than half a year to feed your family. So, however, the grain chewing on them's different. Your jaw's not as strong. It messes with your teeth. Your son, when he eats it, it just doesn't quite work for him, and like his joints just start hurting, and he starts getting arthritis. And
Yeah.
then you get like cows, and the Asians can't drink its milk because they didn't grow up with it. But you adapt to it, and it gives you the runs every once in a while. But it's a great source of protein. And then you continue with all these technological adaptations. Then you get the scythe. Oh, man harvests way faster with a scythe. It's an amazing piece of technology. Women can't use it. Like, only the strongest of the strong women can use a scythe.
Yeah.
But most men can use a scythe. Again, completely changes society. But we've adopted to the changes the scythe brought. Because we've had a very, very long time to adapt to all this. How long has the phone been around? How long has the internet been around?
Yeah. Not very long.
Yeah. Some of them we can figure out pretty fast this impacts, others we can't. Like, if you want to go to one of the biggest dividers of human society, it was the invention of the scythe. Because, like, everyone, men and women, they went into the field, they harvested grain. You bring out the scythe, a man could harvest the grain and make up for the woman that couldn't. Like, you could have one man, so you have 3 people with sickles, let's say 2 men and 1 woman. They go, no, let's make it 2 men, 2 women. They all have sickles. A man with a scythe could harvest at the rate that all 4 of them did together. That's a massive change.
So, is the point you're getting to that the agricultural revolution and its consequences were a disaster for the human race?
It's not that. It's that our technological acceleration we haven't had time to adapt to these problems, and it's hard to see what they do and their knock-on effects. And we're espousing one thing as the problem when there's a whole bunch of things. And it's like there is so, like I said, of the little rock, like that term, what that story was meant to be getting at, I sort of lost the point there, is you can deal with 100 things, but the straw that breaks the camel back, once the camel's back is broken, it needs to go to a chiropractor for like several years. And we don't know if there's the small problems or not, and there's bigger problems as well happening at the same time. And maybe we could deal with the big problem, but we've got 10 of them, and then we got 100 small problems. And
so your point is that if you have 100 problems, you're fine. If you have 101 problems, suddenly you're not fine.
Yeah.
And if you remove 2 problems and you're down to 99, you're still not fine.
No.
Because you were pushed too far.
Yeah.
Right. And meaning in a broader sense, what, that you can't determine if you fixed anything because you get rid of a problem and...
I don't think the societal of, oh, the internet is the problem. Oh, this thing is the problem. I don't think it's as obvious as that. It was like, there's this one thing that's the problem. So what prompted this all? Let's go back to the source of this all. Is I saw this post, which is Finster has come out as trans.
Yeah. And
the post was... I'm so happy we were able to gaslight him into being trans. And so and Finster was talking about, like, want to explore gender, all these things and all this stuff, and like the egg cracking community or whatever, and how Finster would fight back against it. And so I started looking into the false memory thing, because you talk to someone who's like, oh yeah, I've always been this way. Like, I think back to my childhood, and I've always been this way. Like, I always wore a dress or whatever, or always something felt off. It's like, did it really? Or did you ever ride the air balloon? Because that picture is the fake one amongst a lot of memories. But then it's like, but there's also a bunch of other problems. So this is what prompted this whole thing of me, and also listening to Dr. Phil talk about, like, the start of the cell phones, the social media. It's like, there is a lot of problems, and some are bigger than others. And having little problems, like having 20 little problems, makes you less able to deal with one big problem. And I don't think it's as simple as there is one thing that's destroying society right now or making people depressed.
What do you mean 20 little problems makes it harder to deal with one big problem?
Alright, so you're in a boxing match with someone who's slightly weaker than you.
Mike Tyson.
Alright, sure, you're in a boxing match with Mike Tyson.
Yeah. So normally I'd beat him easy.
Yeah, but you have got 20 midgets gnawing your ankles.
Right.
So if Mike Tyson's not there, you can deal with those 20 midgets.
Right.
But these midgets are immortal.
Right.
And you haven't figured out how to kill them yet.
Okay.
It's because, like, they have their weakness, so they all have their own kryptonite. And you're trying to deal with that kryptonite, and they're kind of cute. So
So are you saying something along the lines of, let's take some just obvious, like climate change, okay?
Yeah.
We could deal with climate change if we weren't poisoning ourselves with seed oils and the internet. Is that the sort of...
We'd be better equipped to deal with it.
I also, as a side note, I want to just push back on something where you're talking about like the false memories in Finster and saying I was always like this and that sort of thing. There's this unfortunate double-sided nature to disproving things where, so another example is psychosomatic symptoms of conditions where people talk about there's this investigation that was done where people were put in a car and they were driving along and then the car slowed very gently, but the speaker in the back played the sound of this horrific crashing sound. And most of the participants are like, whoa, I've got the whiplash from that crash. That was crazy. Yeah. And then they have the whiplash for a few days, and then they show them the video where they faked the car crash.
Yeah.
And they realize they're in a fake car crash, and the whiplash goes away. And it, you can say, oh, this dismisses lived experiences, and that's not maybe a very strong argument, but it's more than that, actually. Because what's happening is psychosomatic and psychogenetic disorders. So psychosomatic, first of all, is misused all the time. Psychosomatic means that there's something wrong with your brain that is causing an actual injury.
Yeah.
Like, I'm stressed all the time, therefore, when I punch, I overextend my elbow, and I have actually broken my elbow. That's a psychosomatic injury. Like, you can look at an x-ray and the elbow is actually broken, but that's a psychosomatic disorder because it was caused by stress.
Yeah.
Psychogenetic is where, I think my elbow's broken even though there's nothing there. But if you are thinking your elbow's broken when nothing's there, that doesn't... all that means is that the doctors don't know why you're feeling that. Maybe you have cancer in the part of your brain that is in charge of elbow pain.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard, that's why lived experience is such a powerful argument, because it's very hard to say that this didn't happen. Yeah. And it's also like there's always the incentive to say, oh, so-and-so corrupted my children.
Yeah, so I back to that. The thing with Finster was what prompted it. I have no idea what's going on in their life. That's their thing.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's what prompted, and I might not. It's just that's what started this line of thought. Yeah, and I take your pushback as well. That's a good thing to point out.
Yeah, and it's not so much even to say that you're wrong about it. It's just more, I want this to be part of the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right. There's another thing I thought about last night. I think it might help me figure out what my point is.
Yeah.
Because I sort of know what it is, but I added this in last night and I decided to take it out, but I think I should add it back in. So martial arts. Karate, jiu-jitsu, aikido. So karate is the art of hitting things really hard.
Yeah.
And being really solid while you do that.
Yeah.
They have a great understanding of how to hit stuff hard. How to move the body in such a way it hits things hard. You can see a karate punch coming from a mile away and avoid it. Unless the person's quite good.
Jiu-jitsu is redirection.
No. Aikido is redirection. Oh. So Aikido...
I thought Aikido was the one where you wrap yourself around the person's face.
That's Jiu-jitsu.
Oh, okay.
So Aikido...
Got them backwards.
...is you lock up a joint.
Yeah.
And you make it move in a way that basically the body is put into a position where it's going to lose its balance and the person goes flying. Then you follow after the person. And it's really fun actually to be thrown in Aikido because it's like, I had no idea that would happen. Like your arm gets twisted up in a way, then they push on your elbow joint, and it's not even painful, it's just they've lined up, you know how you can have those snakes that have the clicky clacky sort of movement?
Yeah.
And if you line up in a straight line, then you can push it. That's basically what they're doing to your body. They just line up and then you push and then you're like, whee, and you go fly and then you tumble across the map and you get up again. It can be quite fun.
Yeah.
And doing that to someone can also be quite fun. It's like, so if I do this and this and this to them, then they just tumble over. It's like, that's so cool. And so really good understanding of how to manipulate someone to push them away from you.
Yeah.
Then jiu-jitsu, like you said, you wrap yourself around someone's face.
Yeah.
So you lock your limbs in a way around their limbs in a way that their limbs no longer move. Then you cause pain or you call off their air supply or whatever. You take them down, you pin them. And it's the art of basically tying yourself and another person into knots, and you're in control of how the knots are tied. And it's really cool. I enjoy it for a different sense, but it's also a lot scarier, I find, than Aikido. Because they really understand how to lock up a body and make it so it doesn't move anymore. And it's drawing everything in. It's like this slowly closing shut, tightening trap. And it's this really cool like understanding of the body in that way. And so these three different martial arts have very different understandings of the body. Like karate guys who've done a kata like 1,000 times, they can do these weird body movements, and like observers like, oh, they're just doing a dance. Or even dance. Dance is something people can relate to more, I think, than karate. You see a really good dancer, and it's like, oh, that's so cool. And you try to do those dance moves, and you can't. And they have an understanding of how their body works, and they've really practiced it, and they know how to move their body so it moves like that. So a really good dancer, if they see a routine they haven't done before, they're going to be able to start learning how to do it sooner. And so they understand their body and their movements. And the martial artists understand their art if they've done a lot. So karate guy, really solid, knows how to hit. Aikido guy knows how to send people flying, and how to disarm people, and how to do some manipulation. The judo guy knows how to basically tie you into a knot and move his body and your body in a way that they lock up. And they're all interesting. And so there are exceptions to this, though, because like they have all these solid understandings. This is how it works. So if someone in any of these martial arts, because they all have holds, try to put my wrists into a pain hold, there's going to be two problems. One, I have really, really strong wrists, and so I can fight back against mechanical advantage. And you're told in martial arts, don't try to fight back against the mechanical advantage, because you'll always lose. They say that because in most cases you'll lose. And if you're resisting, the person who's fighting against you will put more force into it. And then if you're like, all right, yeah, they've beaten me, and then you let go, they're still putting so much force that they could actually drive it too far. However, let's say you have a 6'6" guy, and you're trying to get mechanical advantage. You will not.
Yeah. If you're fighting Hafthor Bjornsson.
And you're 5'4".
Yeah. And you grab his pinky, you're not going to move it.
Yeah. It's like, there won't be that mechanical advantage. So there's that there. So I have really strong wrists. I also have like some sort of nerve damage or nerve deadening in both my wrists. I don't know when I'm in a wrist hold. And so I have to base it on how much pressure I'm feeling and not how much pain. Because pain's really good for telling you you're in a hold and you need to tap out. And so I've had to learn to tap out really fast. Like someone puts me into a wrist hold, I tap out because I'm worried my wrist will get damaged. Because I have no knowledge that they're getting hurt. When I was doing judo back in university, I took a class. I put this girl into a leg lock. So I had my legs in a way, they were wrapped around one of her arms. And what it's supposed to be is you lift up your hip and it makes the elbow bend and lock against the shoulder. And so if it continues too far, it'll snap the elbow at the joint.
Yeah.
She was double jointed. And women are more double jointed than men. But she was really double jointed. And so she was trying to do the hold on me. And I was just way stronger than her. And so it wasn't working that way. And I was trying to do the hold on her. And I was actually apparently executing it quite well. However, her elbow was bending the wrong way. It wasn't working. So back to the point I'm trying to find here. With that, these people have really excellent understanding of how their thing works in what ways. But there are exceptions to that. There are different people. There are individuals. So that interlocutes in. And so you can know a lot, but a karate guy versus Aikido guy is going to be, when they match up against each other, it's going to be strange. And a judo guy against a karate guy, or a judo guy against an Aikido guy. Like the judo usually wins. And that's because judo's much more of a realistic martial art. This is how actual fighting goes. Because if you go back to the history of Aikido, it's based on sword fighting. And it's basically, you both have swords. This guy's about to swing a sword at your head. Grab his wrist, manipulate it, send him flying, and then stab him while he's flying. And so the Aikido's like, all right, a guy's coming at you with a chop. What do you mean he's chopping me? He's going to chop your neck with his hand. So you must move in quickly, grab his elbow, grab his wrist, and throw him. Why is he attacking me with a chop?
Because he's Maxwell Smart.
Yeah. Like, why is he... And the art is he's attacking you with a katana. He's about to cut you in half.
Right. Okay, so...
But, so, there's these adaptations, these changes the martial arts have gone through. They don't interact with each other properly or adapt in different ways. There's exceptions to the rules. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of understanding, but there's also a lot of things we don't understand. And so, what I'm getting at is a grand theory of you know, like a conspiracy theory map, like all these things, like all the little loops, like the question has all those lines in it. Is people see we have the societal woe of depression. There's extremely high rates of depression, there's extremely high rates of sickness, and there's extremely high rates of obesity.
Yeah.
And so people will say obesity is making people depressed.
Depression is making people obese.
Yeah, people will say there's...
Patriarchy is making people depressed.
Or
patriarchy is making people obese.
This thing's making people sick. Like,
seed oils are making people sick.
Yeah, so seed oils are making people sick. So let's take those three things. So sickness, depression, obesity. We can even combine... No, let's not combine. So we'll take these three things. These are... And we'll throw loneliness in there. So we'll take those four. 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, let's say. We'll put them at the center of this tangled web. And then we loop all these strings around. We're putting pins everywhere. And that... It's not one thing. There's so much that's causing problems. And my earlier points of all those things is we have recognized things that cause problems after the damage has been done. But there's so much damage being done now by so many things that we can't recognize it anymore.
What does that have to do with the 4 pillars of horsemen?
They're at the center of it. So we see this problem. We know this problem exists. And so we're saying it's this thing, it's this thing, it's this thing, it's this thing.
So we're saying loneliness, depression, and obesity are all caused by TikTok.
Yeah.
Right.
Or the phone.
Right.
Smartphone or whatever. And like there's I think it's this much bigger web of a bunch of little things, a bunch of medium things, and a few big things. And they're all slowly tightening together, making the core worse.
So you can say this is all just a meaning crisis, right? There's no God. And
well, I was actually, that wasn't the original thing, is the technology of the Enlightenment. We haven't adapted to that yet.
But if you get rid of God, then you are searching for meaning everywhere else. You're searching for meaning in a movement you join. You're searching for meaning in creating the perfect government. And if there's no meaning, then it doesn't matter how you treat your body. But then you say maybe you don't think there's a God because you're obese and it's messed with your brain chemicals, and that's why you don't think there's a God. And if you worked out, you'd think there's a God. So there's no concrete beginning and end point to all of it. Sort of.
Yeah, it's this tangled mess of so many layers, and it's really, really hard to unravel.
But I think if you start anywhere,
probably
you make everything else better if it's so intertwined.
No, I think that's a part of it. It does. If you start...
It doesn't matter if you clean your room or if you eat healthy, you're going to...
Yeah, no, I think that's a good conclusion to this thought.
You're going to improve your TikTok addiction.
Yeah, you can start unraveling elsewhere. Like, so soldiers in World War II were taking...
No, it was Vietnam.
Is Vietnam heroin? Yeah, they were taking heroin. And they were getting addicted to it while they were in Vietnam. And they worried that they were going to come home and have a bunch of heroin addicts. And then because they were with their family again, they didn't need to take their heroin.
Yeah. Because they were fulfilled, yeah.
Yeah, so when I'm working out at the gym now, like before I'd go to the gym, and it was the duty I had to do. I just have to do this. I want to be healthy. I go to the gym now, I'm like running on the track, I'm doing the exercises, and I have like this loony grin on my face. It's fun to exercise. Like there's enjoyment, there's pure enjoyment in just running. And it's actually doable, like, and that enjoyment makes me stay at the gym longer and work out more. And
I wonder if the biggest hurdle with the this interconnected web you're trying to describe, right, is like there's a 1,000 things in it, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And if one of them isn't real, and you put all your effort into trying to fix that one, right? So you said one of your 4 pillars is loneliness, right?
Yeah.
And depression is another one, right? And I'm not sure if depression or loneliness are real problems.
Could be sickness.
What I mean is, if someone's lonely, and so therefore they're depressed and they're obese and they're this, right?
Yeah.
The solution being chuck people at them, I don't think is going to work.
No.
And if someone is depressed, well, maybe like SSRIs or something, that might give them the motivation to start doing what they need to do to fix the underlying cause, right? Yeah. So maybe you can chuck a solution at. So maybe, well, loneliness, I guess you could cure with heroin, potentially.
What I'm getting at with this whole thing, right, is we need to bring blondum back into society and it'll fix all our problems. I bet it works excellent for weight loss as well.
But if you say, okay, the problem is loneliness, is lonely, I'm low. Like, I see this all the time online. It's not with loneliness, it's with a girlfriend. People say, I'm 29, I hate my job. I've never had sex, and I'm a loser.
One more year, and you get to be a wizard.
And I don't have a girlfriend. I've never even kissed a girl. I'm sorry for using the negative voice, actually. But there's a lot of people that they focus obsessively on, like, I've never had sex. I've never had a girlfriend. I've never had a girlfriend. I've never had a girlfriend. And it's like, yeah, well, I wouldn't stand to be around you either if you're just like,
your entity is not having a girlfriend.
Like, what if you say, like, I'm 29, never dated, maybe you throw that in there, but you do it this way, like, I'm 29, little shy, I love Magic the Gathering, I love mountain biking, I own a car washing business, who wants to hang out, maybe go on a date,
Yeah.
That's awkward, got some weird hobbies, there's someone out there for you, maybe, and maybe they're interested in that, like, now people, they want to complain about what's going wrong, and it's like, yeah, because you're looking, it's catharsis to some degree, but you're also looking for answers. You're saying, what do I do? I'm 29, I've never had a girlfriend. But it's like, having a girlfriend won't fix your life, and having, like, someone, oh, I'm lonely, here's 10 friends. It's like, the friends aren't going to, you can be lonely in a crowded room, and you can be what's the phrase, you can be content atop a mountain. And I think The Wanderer, I keep thinking of the poem The Wanderer. The thing that kills people is almost exile rather than loneliness, right? It's the feeling that you have no place to go.
Yeah.
So it's not the not having people around, it's the having no one to go to. But if you're like, I know that I've got like these, I've got the hearth, I've got the Lord's Hall where I can lay my head on his lap, then I don't know if that was like metaphor or if that was something they did in medieval ages. Seems kind of gay, but maybe those Anglo-Saxons, they were
just laying your head in a lap thing was actually pretty common.
Just like, but like in the Lord's Hall, you just got this line of knights like, my turn, yay, my head's on the Lord's lap. It's adorable. You think of all these gruff like Saxon warriors, and they're like, my turn, tell me a story, Lord. No, I don't. Exile, loneliness, I'm not saying it isn't real, and it could be devastating, right? And I've had times where I just desperately wanted to see a person, or desperately wanted to be, and I've done charting where I've seen like, oh, my mood's way better when I'm with people than when I'm not. But with this interconnected web, again, the question becomes,
I think my point is the observation of this web. I don't know what to do with it, but I observed it more, I think, like noticing it. And I feel like people are only looking at pieces of it and looking at the center bit. Like they look at the center bit and then they see one string, and maybe fixing that string will help, but there's so much with it. And it's not to say there's so much wrong with the world, because I don't want to say that. But
have you heard of oh, so you can keep going.
There's not one cause and there's not one solution, I think is what I'm... Cause it kind of rubs me the wrong way when I heard Dr. Phil talking about like the cell phone 2008, and that's the start of all the problems. Maybe he's right, but I feel like my problems personally, so this partly why it drives me the wrong way, is my cell phone definitely exacerbated the problem for me when I was at my lowest, of the fact of just spending too much time on it, let's say. Because it's super easy, I can just use it. I don't have to put any effort into it, I can just use it. I have to move my thumb, and I can see quick bits of information which my tired brain can digest about halfway. And that's the only thing I can do with my life.
And so your interests narrow to the cell phone because that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And then you get better and you stop using the cell phone as much.
The cell phone becomes a tool again.
Yeah.
And
you're not using it nearly as much.
Yeah.
And and if you had stopped using if you'd said, no, the cell phone's the root of all my problems before, and you got rid of it, then
I would have just lied there.
The air doesn't suddenly get better.
Yeah.
And maybe you eat instead, or maybe you take up it could actually be you take up like hiking, and you just camp out for weeks on end, and it fixes your problem as well. But yeah, it won't necessarily solve your problem.
Yeah.
There's
and so that's
and that's what I'm trying to get at with the loneliness thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, you can say, oh, it's loneliness, it's loneliness, it's loneliness. And of course, this is going to be different for different people. There's some people the cell phone is poison.
Yeah, that's what I was saying with the martial arts things of my wrists. I don't feel them. I think that's where the idea is coming. That girl with the double jointed elbow.
So for some people, loneliness isn't an issue.
Yeah.
It's like you feel lonely and it's terrible, but if you had enough oxygen, you wouldn't feel lonely anymore.
Yeah.
So, anxiety, there's this interesting thing with the majority of anxiety cases where if someone's having an anxious attack, you can be like, breathe, and they're like, oh, that. Like, anxiety is a sign that you're low on oxygen.
Yeah.
And so the solution to anxiety is just breathing. And
well, so for like it was about 2 weeks during that period, Z Frank's song "Hey, You're Okay."
Yeah.
I was listening to that on repeat in the fetal position, and so the phone was what was playing with that, and that was just stopping me from, I don't know what, but keeping me sane, I guess. And yeah, no, but just that treatment there of just this nebulous voice but saying, hey, you're okay, and that like compassion in that, keeping you slightly sane. But me going into a room and getting belly rubbed by people saying, hey, you're okay, wasn't going to fix the problem. But I did feel very, very lowly and very lone. I felt not okay. But
gave you the strength to continue when you didn't have anything else, but it was not a solution.
Yeah, like being in a room with people doing that wasn't a solution. But when I was in that state, my mind was on, I'm really lonely.
And it's not...
And
well, it's like...
I was going to Titans for like little event things, and I'd be there for a couple of minutes and then go no, and I'd leave. But my thought was like, oh, I need to be around people to be happy. I need to socialize to be happy and get out of this funk. But that wasn't what it was.
It's like,
Sorry, I was trying to make a banal point and I said something really depressing.
It's like a painkiller, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're in pain, you can't do what you need to do. The painkiller will give you what you need to do, but it's not going to fix your broken arm.
No.
But it gives you the strength to keep going to that next moment and that next moment and that next moment. And, it could be more positive than, maybe the being with people. Well, painkiller doesn't have to be negative either, right? Yeah. Like, that can be a positive idea. But, Z Frank will get you to the tomorrow 6 tomorrows away when you can open that window and suddenly you can breathe.
Yeah.
But he's not going to open the window for you in that sense. I had a friend, well, it was more of an acquaintance, sort of, but he killed himself. And I'm not sure anyone quite knows why, right? But he did a lot of drugs and stuff in his life and other things. But he killed himself late at night, and that morning, early in the morning, his house got a phone call saying, hey, you've just been accepted for this job. Great to have you come out here. And so, job he loved. And he hadn't heard back from them for ages, and then they just, bad timing, they phoned him that day. And, you could say if he had, let's say, just found some stupid gotcha game to play that night, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't have fixed his depression. It wouldn't have fixed his drug addiction. It wouldn't have fixed, maybe he was in, I can't help but wonder, the way he killed himself, he might have been involved with some gang stuff, and maybe he was protecting people by killing himself. Like, there's all sorts of, because he was a drug dealer at one point, so there's all sorts of possibilities. But, the gotcha game wouldn't have cured his depression or addiction or danger levels or anything, right?
Yeah.
But it could have been that thing that got him to the tomorrow, where he gets this job out in the middle of the wilderness volunteering, whatever, or firefighting, whatever it is. And then that probably doesn't fix him either, the volunteering, but maybe the fresh air, or maybe the just not having access to any drugs, or maybe the no gang members can get him if he's out in the woods. Maybe that fixes him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. There's what's that? I guess the pain. What would be the painkillers can look like cures, and the cures can look like painkillers, and it's both are good for you, but if you use them in the wrong way for too long, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, and the solution,
and it's going to be different for every person.
Yeah, and the solution and the problem might not be the same for everyone as well.
Yeah. And it could be like, okay, man, here's my painkiller, drinking, right? Yeah. You drink, you'll be able to make it through the day. But then someone else, they've got some weird autoimmune disorder where the drinking prevents like a anxiety disorder from getting out of hand, and the drinking is actually the cure for them. Like the free radicals or whatever the science thing was in the 90s. Everyone was like, oh, get a glass of red wine every night. The free radicals will cure you or whatever. Maybe that actually works for you. And then it's not your painkiller, it's your cure. And you fix something after like you drink red wine once a night for a year and something's fixed. I maybe this is to your point as well. Whatever it is.
It's more of an observation, I think, than anything else, and pattern recognition.
So I was talking about Destiny a few episodes ago, and about how he has this thing where he...
Oh, that Destiny, okay.
He's like, yeah, the Destiny streamer and StarCraft player guy, where he seems to be in this sort of adrenaline-chasing addictive cycle, right? Where he's in these polyamorous relationships because it's the only thing that keeps him going. And what happens is this is where you become addicted to the painkiller. This is the thing that keeps you going, but you haven't done anything to the underlying bottom thing. And there's this song. I don't remember who... Papa Roach, maybe? It's like, cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort. You know that song?
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
But there's a line in it which is something like I'm empty so I feed on chaos. And it perfectly describes what I was trying to say. It's like, and so I think the bigger problem is not there's all these problems and there's all these cures. The problem is that, or not the problem, but the sort of meta takeaway from this interconnected web is that, personality disorders, cluster B, right? Talk about that a lot.
Sorry, I really like the imagery of the statement of, we have this target web, we have these so visualize this, if you will. You have this person.
It's ableist.
You have this doomer guy. He's in his room, like slightly overweight, he's got the scruffy hair, scruffy beard. He's staying in front of his computer. The room's dark.
But remember, if that is God's mission for you, then that is what you should be doing.
So he's there. And he's got a lot of problems.
It's when you act inauthentically that it's a problem.
He's got a lot of problems, and like we have the drugs on his shelf. We have like a bottle of seed oils, let's say, because he's got autoimmune disorder. He's wearing computer programmer stockings. So like the blue and pink, whatever.
He's got a BLM and the patriarchy T-shirt. He wants to drain the swamp. He's got his mega hat on. He's got it all.
And
some swamps need to be drained.
It's not a computer in front of him. It's not like any symbolic things, but he's got all these problems. And there's a rift of chaos in front of him, and it's just pouring into his face. And he's anemic. He's very he needs food, and so he's just eating this chaos to try to fix this problem. And the chaos is in his room, but it's also there in front of him. That's what he's like gorging on, is the chaos.
Well, maybe Midjourney can help you with the thumbnail, but that's going to be a tricky one. Maybe just do a stick figure.
I think I could draw that, actually, if I don't know if I want to. Some things you don't want to draw.
But so cluster B personality disorder, right? The
personality order. This cluster B. Cluster B. That's dyslexia. Man, my joke was ruined by my stupid brain.
They're both part of the alphabet, so you can pretend it's still funny. So, with cluster B personality disorder, the person...
Personality disorder?
Okay, I want to make this point. The person feels bad. There's this gnawing emptiness inside them. Right? Narcissism, borderline, whatever. They feel empty, they feel fragile, they feel like they're missing something. They have no purpose, they're listless, something's going on. And what they do in their different ways, the various flavors of personality disorder, the different flavors of cluster B, is they latch on to someone needs to fix this for me. And so they say, you are my cure, you are my cure. And if someone then says, whoa, you step back. They're now causing your depression. They're causing your anxiety. Because they're denying you the cure. That's the cure over there. And maybe 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 I'm overreacting to loneliness, and it's just the sort of the disorder is painted so clearly to me of the when the painkiller becomes the addiction, when it's like, I need the other person to fulfill me. I need the other person to fulfill me because, or maybe this is narcissistic because the other person can let you down. But they also have their own lives where they're trying to cut seed oils out of their own diet. They're trying to...
This wasn't the point I was making beforehand, but it does make an interesting point. Actually, that imagery I was talking about is, so this person who's eating the chaos, right, is, their life's a mess. They're a mess. And we actually have a lot of the problems in there. So let's give them the computer.
Yeah.
So we put the computer there. Let's give them the seed oil. So they're chugging seed oil.
Yeah.
And they have soy somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they have all these paraphernalia, so the mental things. They have a lobotomy needle sticking out of their eye. Maybe not. Depends on how graphic you want this imagery. They're drinking laudanum as well. So they're doing all these things that are horrible.
They're doing everything they can to ease the pain except fix their life.
Yeah, so they have... Well, it's not even that. So they're trying to ease the pain. That's one thing. So they're doing these things to ease the pain. There's these bad things going on. So, like, they have a bunch of destructive behaviors. The seed oil is affecting their autoimmune disease, so that's there. They have a burning coal plant in there, so there's too much CO2, let's say, for my part. So they're not getting enough oxygen. They have all these problems. And someone can go into that room, and they will say, oh, you need to get rid of that burning coal. That's the root of all your problems. And there is this big mess in their life. And they can start fixing that thing, and they can fix that thing, they clean up that thing. They can do all this. But if they're still eating chaos, they're still hollow.
Right, yeah. And so you can live a perfect life, but the feeding chaos, what you're doing is you're being a coward.
Yeah.
Because what feeding chaos is you're saying, I'm out of control. Whereas what you do to defeat the chaos is you say, I will create order.
Yeah.
And my order will probably be wrong, and I will probably be an idiot or a tyrant. I will make a mistake. And like, look, right now we're doing this podcast, right? We've decided to make a podcast. There's people out there who have better ideas than us, that can speak better than us, that don't have a podcast. And so they're not doing the thing, if that makes...
What's really interesting, if we go back to me, to be selfish, my recent experience, is my breakdown that I had, is I saw my life as chaos.
That was one little breakdown and thinks the podcast is about him.
Yes, this is another Connor episode. It's like the mega episodes. But what prompted it is I thought I was doing everything right at that time. Because, like, all right, I'm still so tired, I have these problems, so let's fix my sleep schedule. And I was trying to clean, like, I was trying to do everything I could, and nothing was working. But it was me trying to fix it. Actually trying what I could. Because there's all these different problems, and all these people say, oh, you need to get rid of the cell phone, you need to get rid of the computer, you need to touch grass, you need to exercise, you need to have a good sleep schedule, you need to eat the lion diet, you need to take athletic greens, you need to run around naked and get pissed on by dragons.
Yeah.
You need to grab a cat by its tail and swing it over your head.
But what you were doing is you were creating order again and again and again.
And I was seeking it. I was seeking order.
And you were failing again and again. Yes. And you felt the pain every time you failed. And so it's like, why try? Because I'm just going to feel the pain. But the thing is, if you keep trying, eventually one of them works.
And I get this thing. It will show you what's going on in your house. Get this device. And it shows the different levels. And it's like, all right, your argon is whatever. It's fine. Your particles are fine. Moisture is a little bit low.
Your CO2 is like you're inside a chimney.
Yeah, it's in the red. And it's like, all right, let's open the window. Let's just do that. And let's open the door, open the window at the same time, let an air tunnel go through.
But you see, what you did was you kept building order.
Yeah.
And it kept being the wrong order. And so you were a failure again and again and again. And that is scary and demoralizing. And that's why you keep feeding the chaos. But
when there is the order, like I was going to the gym partly to try to fix this. I'm still going to the gym. Even though it wasn't the totality solution of opening the window, I'm still going to the gym. And like the diet thing, I'm still trying to fix the diet because it's its own problem. I'm still working on that. I'm still working on recovering the sleep. Like they don't stop because yes, there is a bigger overlying thing, but there's everything else. And there was the seeking in the first place. And there was the looking away from a portal to chaos.
But, okay, so here's... Okay. Eat right, exercise, those sort of things, right?
Yeah.
What those are is those are the order you live within. Those are the tried and true traditions.
Yeah.
Traditions are failing you still. So you go out into chaos. You try crazy things. You're like, I'm just going to show up to these events. I'm going to do this. And then, oh, here's something new. Air quality.
Yeah.
You bring that in. The air is fixed. Woo! I feel better. But the tradition still stands. Those traditions weren't thrown out. Other traditions, maybe like about air quality, were thrown out. But because of this Indra's net, I don't know if you've heard about it. It's an Indian god who they have this net of beads, and it's an infinitely large net, and each intersection of the web there's a bead, and each bead reflects the entire net inside of it. So you have this Indra's net of problems.
Yeah.
And there's more of them. And it's like, how do I find them? Well, you keep going out into chaos, and you keep trying, and you keep losing, you keep dying in your adventure, and you come back stronger with something new. And that is why there is no... Well, that's why you follow the infinite staircase, right? That's the dance between order and chaos, or the yin yang. That's the... You can't say this will fix your life. That's why you have... If it wasn't for those commies, we'd all be better. It's like, no, you have to... Yeah, get rid of the commies, but then you have to do more. You have to just always follow that path.
Obviously get rid of the commies.
Yeah. But that's why... If I were to define my political beliefs, right, and someone said left or right, I'd be like, no, heroism. Because there will be a time when the left will fail you, and there will be a time when the right will fail you. And so the cluster B is basically, you don't want to die. That's kind of what the disorder is. Like, you don't want to die. But because you...
So are most liches cluster B? A lich has to feed off other people's souls to keep existing.
Yeah, well, with the cluster B, they're not feeding off the soul to prevent dying. Well, sort of what they are, because they're not... If you don't die, you feel hollow inside, because you need to die to keep breaking free of that shell, right?
Yeah.
Because you're kind of like an egg that it breaks and a bigger egg comes out, and then a bigger egg comes out. In the cluster B, they start at the smallest egg and they stay there. Or they get frozen somewhere along the line. Right? Like a narcissist is basically a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
That just never broke, because they don't want to stop being a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Because it's dangerous to stop being a 2-year-old. You're responsible then for your actions, and your actions are horrifying.
Yes.
And even if you're a good person who isn't a narcissist, your actions are horrifying. You look back at your history and you like cringe, and you're like, oh, I did that?
Yeah.
That's horrible. That's what this is right here, what I want to talk about. This is me writing the cringiest stuff I've ever read. But you break out and you break out and you break out. But they don't want to die. But what that means is you're trapped in this little egg, and it's horrible. It feels horrible. So you're trying to distract yourself from pain. Okay. And so you need the other people to distract you from pain. And that could be the root of all disorders, really. It's the cluster Bs, they choose people to distract them from the pain. But other people, they choose their addiction to distract them from the pain.
See, I've had this problem with the clash of Western and Eastern philosophies, and the problem with language in between them is you hear about ego death, and it's your ego has to die. And so there's this big thing in Eastern sort of Zen teaching of you have to let your ego die. You have to have ego death. And then Westerners try to go, oh, you have to have your ego die. You have to have ego death. And I really disliked that conceptually. And it's because you're letting yourself, it's painful, you're letting yourself be destroyed. And so part of it still matches up. But it's the cycle you're talking about, the bigger egg comes out.
Yeah.
That's what the meditation's talking about.
Yeah, ego death can't be permanent.
Yeah. That's what the meditation's talking about, is there's the bigger egg underneath and that one grows, and that's the pain. And the death, you come back to life after a death. Whereas I felt my own interpretation, and I probably projected it onto other people, and maybe some of them thought this, is ego death. I have no ego.
Yeah, no, I think that is what a lot of people think, and a lot of people do, is you get rid of the ego. You have to get rid of the ego. You have to, because you hear people say it all the time. You have to get rid of the ego and be egoless. Yeah. No, you should not be egoless.
Yeah.
Unless you're Buddha. Like, Buddhism is actually get rid of the ego. That's what they want to do. It's like, if I have no desires, I'm no longer trapped on this prison, which is Earth. That's what the Gnostics believe as well.
Yeah, but my thought more of the closer to Zen Buddhism is carry water, well enlightened, carry water after.
Maybe. I would. It'd be hard to describe anything to Zen Buddhism, so...
I'm sorry, not Zen. Fine, what's his face? Beardy, talking man.
Like Alan Watts?
Yeah.
Maybe. I put him in that...
Slightly misinterpreted.
I have a paranoid eye on him, of him being in the camp of ego should die forever.
Okay.
But maybe I'm wrong. But what you should... Yeah. Your ego should die and be reborn instantly. You do not
Yeah.
want to be without an ego.
Yeah.
Because you need a sense of self. You need to go into chaos. That's your ego dying. But you need to come back.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're slain by the monsters. So, TikTok, beautiful source of information. All the information you could want. It's so interesting that you neglect the rest of your life. And the rest of your life suffers as a result, which makes it worse in comparison to TikTok. But TikTok becomes boring because we get bored with anything, no matter how good it is. And so you need to find something more extreme. You need to find better TikToks. You need to find ones that are more flashy, more shorter, punchier, quicker. And I think that's where that cycle of attention span comes in. I don't think it's like it is shortening your attention span, but it's shortening your attention span because you're addicted. I don't know how you could define it, but if there was a person who was immune to addiction and you got them to watch an hour of TikTok, I think they would come out with the same attention span as when they went in. But everyone is addicted to some degree.
Yeah.
And so they go in and they see TikTok and it's better than the world, but it also becomes boring, so they need better and better TikTok.
Yeah.
And then so they're constantly searching, and their world becomes worse as TikTok becomes worse. And so that's the same hollowness. I'm hollow inside because I'm not so this, when I was talking about like you're that little egg, right?
Yeah.
In this case, rather than the hollow breaking free being dying, in this case it is still dying, but breaking free in this case, dying is, so with a cluster B, when they die, they are saying, I am a monster and I need to be responsible for the things I've done.
Yeah.
That's how a cluster B dies. They take responsibility. Whereas the TikTok addict, how they take responsibility is they say, there are things in my life that need to be done.
Yeah.
There is an authentic self. Well, same with the cluster B. There's an authentic self I am not being. I need to be that authentic self no matter how much it hurts.
Yeah.
No matter how much of my life I ruin being that authentic self. No matter how many people I alienate, no matter how many job opportunities I lose, whatever it might be, how much money I lose. I need to be authentic, right? And so you break free from that. But rather, you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't, because that's hard. That's scary. That's terrifying. It's painful. But now I feel hollow because I'm trapped in this small self. And so I need the better and better TikToks to distract me from that pain. Whereas the cluster B, it's like I need the more and more extreme life. I need the more and more crazy person to distract me from that pain. Like a histrionic person. It's like I need to strip naked in public now to distract me from that pain. I need to do whatever it takes just to have that one more moment. I'm hollow inside, so I feed on chaos, and that's where the chaos comes in. You look at Hassan, I think this is, and MatPat, right? Hassan was saying streaming's the hardest job in the world. It's soul destroying. And you have MatPat quitting YouTube, and he's saying, I want to focus on what I want to do. And I think in the case of what they're both doing is they haven't been creating the kind of, you had this in a smaller degree, I think, where you're not creating the videos you want to be creating, or you feel incentivized to not create the type of videos you want to be creating.
Yeah.
And if you make that your career, like Hassan and MatPat have done, and you're doing it every day and you're relying on it and that's the thing you do, you start hating yourself. You're like, I am not being the person I want to be. I'm not who I want to be. And so that is the hardest job in the world. There's nothing harder than
not being yourself.
Not being yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so people are mocking Hassan, and he doesn't seem like a very nice person in a lot of ways. He's done some good stuff. I've seen him do some charity work, and like he's messed up with charity work too, but it seemed well-meaning.
Yeah.
I don't like basically anything he says, but I can't call him a bad person necessarily. Like he seems sometimes well-meaning. It's hard to say. But he supported those terrorists and whatnot, but it's like one man's terrorist, another man's freedom fighter. It's always hard. But he seems to me, he does those react videos where he's not there and his chair's just going and it's playing, and it's like, you don't like doing this. You have a contract to stream 8 hours a day for like 2 years or whatever.
Yeah.
You seem to hate your life. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm projecting. But it's like, I think why it's the hardest job in the world and why it's soul destroying is because you are not doing what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
And I said this,
well, also on the soul destroying thing. So part of the reason I stopped doing Let's Plays is one of the requirements that I have with Let's Plays. Like, one of them is not what I wanted to make. I wanted to make different things. But one of the things when I was doing them, so when I first started doing them, it's just record, mumble, whatever, go along.
But it has to be something only you could make, right?
Yeah, well, it has to be some. Well, no, that came along later. So it was for about a year. I was just doing Let's Plays of what a Let's Play would be. And you said something to me. This was a little bit before I left to college, which is there has to be a reason why people would watch this.
Yeah.
Because you can't just like put whatever out there. And it has to be interesting.
Except for this podcast. This podcast gets an exception. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It has to be interesting.
Yeah.
And the if you put work into it, you get something out. And so with my Let's Plays, it was, I will record for 2 hours, and that will produce 2 episodes that are 20 minutes long. And because I had to find what was interesting within there and create a story within that. And one of my favorite things I made, which is, maybe I'll be able to do it again someday, is when I was doing the anime series. I was doing like little animations inside there. I actually had a story I had slightly planned out. I was doing an insane amount of art. And part of the reason I was working so hard there was like, I need to have something succeed in my life right now because I am more than broke. I'm in debt. I don't have a job. I need something to succeed. So I was working really hard trying to do something creative with the Let's Play with that. I was doing 2 different jobs at the same time that weren't full time, but they're really physical jobs. So I was very stressed out at that point in time. But so I was putting something into that, and I was putting a story and putting a spin on it. It had to be this tale. And just muddling my way trying to find the story in something random, which is sort of what the Let's Plays were, is I will set up this list of mods. So here's like a list of mods, and them together will create a story. And then the multiplayer servers of, there'll be this server, we'll have several main mods you can follow, and I'm going to follow this one path pretty strictly, and I'm going to see what interactions it breeds with the other players. That plan ultimately failed because some people are nutcases who do every single mod and they finish every single mod within a week and then they no longer play on the server. That was just the nature of that and the players I had access to play with. But that idea there of, let's see how the interaction plays out, and then with Samuel Streamer, right? He has, this is these mods I have, but he takes a step forward. This is my goal I have with these mods. Let's see where that goes.
Yeah.
With me, it's, these are the mods I have. I have an inkling of what's going on. And for one of the final series I set up, it was, let's try to complete something from each of these mods. When I completed that, though, when I was done that series and I was getting to the end of it, and the end of the Let's Play, it's like, I've kind of done everything I can do with this extent of this wandering. There is no, like, I will do it again, and I can, but it will be the same story with a different face. Unless I put a lot more work into it. I have plans to do a lot more work into that, but then those plans get scuppered by you having no life force left. But maybe someone like Hassan with his soul destroying is, maybe there is something else slightly going on in his life, and then, but it's like not that bad, but there's something else there, and he's also streaming for 8 hours a day.
And so he doesn't have the energy to, like, maybe if, okay, let's say he has a neighbor's dog, it's just barking like crazy, right?
Yeah.
So he doesn't sleep well. Maybe if he was sleeping well, it would allow him to put more work into his streams, and then he would actually like his streams, and he wouldn't think it was as hard, even though he was putting in like twice as much work.
Yeah.
He'd actually think it was less hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's potentially other factors, like Matt Pat, he has a kid he's trying to raise, and he has a wife.
Well, the thing that kind of
and like that's a different factor, that's a change.
The thing that blew my mind recently, actually been taking penicillin for I had a throat swab done, and they're like, "Whoa, you need to be on penicillin." So I started taking penicillin a little bit ago, and within the first 2 doses, so that's like what, the first 6 hours or something.
Yeah.
My energy has gone up like 8 times.
What's penicillin?
Penicillin is a mold found on bread. It's an antibacterial.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It's an antibacterial.
So it's an infection of some sort you have? That's why you take penicillin, right?
Right, but the way you phrase that is deceptive. I am taking it for a potential infection. But that doesn't mean it's related to, I don't know, I feel like there's a hidden implication and it's so that's your problem? Like if you're implying it's for depression or it's for my throat being hurt or it's...
No, it's, you're taking it and you're getting a result of increased energy, and so you have a potential infection.
Because it's penicillin, right? Taking the penicillin. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. So...
Charlie, oversee my head. Give me a second. Okay. I can think again.
So yes, my energy levels were lowered by something that the penicillin has impacted.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe, do you think I read too much into that? Or do you think there was an implication of like, oh, that's the problem with your throat, or that's the problem with your energy, or that's the problem? Do you think?
I think it's a mix of both.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's...
If someone says, so that's your problem to me, I don't know. I could go...
I think I did say, so that's your problem. I think I did say that. But I also think that a normal human would go, yeah, that's my problem. Instead of taking it as an attack or...
Right, but maybe if we were less accepting of these blatant attacks on our character, the world would be a better place because we wouldn't... Well, it's tricky, though, actually, because you have to stand up for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't defend those things which you find important, then you will begin to think them less important, and then you'll have no meaning, and you won't know what you actually care about.
Yeah.
Because you'll have abandoned everything you cared about.
And then streaming for 8 hours will destroy your soul.
Yeah, but
Also, come on, like, have you... I mean, he obviously leaves and does the sitting there, but as someone who's streamed for, like, 3 hours, constantly being on, constantly being entertaining, like, having to constantly talk and entertain people and retain them, that's hard.
I think I could talk for it. Well, there's a health aspect there, though,
Yeah.
actually. Like I think I could talk for 8 hours conceptually, but just the health cost might be a different story.
Yeah. And also, like, you're not talking to a person, you're talking to a screen of people who aren't talking back besides chat that flies by really fast.
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be possibly easier to stream if you had, like, a partner.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Streaming with other people, like, doing a thing and you interact with them instead of trying to interact with chat, that's way better.
And the problem as well is there's a delay with the chat, so you have this weird asynchronous conversation.
I think what Lewis set up with the Yogscast is actually brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I think...
Well, it means they have a place they have to go to work as well.
Well, so that's part of it, but even if they're streaming from home, like Ozzy and Booth, they both stream from home. But, alright, this is Duncan's stream. He's playing Medieval Dynasty. And Lewis plays with him, Ravs plays with him, and Oz plays with them. And the stream is them interacting with each other. They're playing the game, and they're interacting with each other. And every once in a while, they see something in chat go by, and they interact with that. But they're mostly interacting with each other. You go to a solo streamer, they're basically interacting with the chat. Or they're focusing on whatever they're doing.
Have you heard, I don't know if this is true, but I have heard that some older Gen Alphas say chat to mean, like, look at this guy here. Like, they'll be in a classroom at school, right? And the teacher will say something like, no, that's wrong. And like, no, it's not. And they're like, chat, are you seeing this?
I have not heard of that. That's slightly disturbing.
I don't know if it's true, but it's funny because...
What is that called? The fear of the younger
Juvenoia.
generation.
Yeah.
My juvenoia is repelled and recoiled by that concept.
Because you don't think it'll happen to you, but it'll happen to you. There's that amazing Simpsons, I don't know if you've seen, where Homer is listening to some song and Abe Simpson comes in, like Homer's a teenager, and Abe Simpson comes in and he's like, oh, this is terrible, what's this racket? And he's like, oh, come on, Dad, get with it. And Abe Simpson's like, I was with it. I was hip and I was with it. But then it changed and I'm no longer with it. And it happened to me and it will happen to you. Yeah. And then it shows Homer remembering it as Bart's listening to some horrible music and he's like, it'll happen to you.
Yes. But that setup of, you're right, so he has a place they have to go and they get the resources from it. But also just, I think, his grand design of basically making these people interact with each other probably keeps them a lot happier and a lot healthier in the sense that it's a person-to-person interaction. And also what's really cool is Hassan says, I have to stream 8 hours a day. Now with Yogscast, you just go to the Yogscast and you get these streamers. And so they probably make a less money because Lewis gets his cut from it. The company editors need to get paid. But they also, then it's like, oh, Duncan was really funny on the Yogscast. And then you go to his independent stream as well from there. And it's like, oh, that network I think is a very clever thing. But also just making a centralized office is really good.
I think the important thing as well, it's not just, I might rally against loneliness here again.
Yeah.
But it's not that the Yogscast you're less alone, right? Compared to Hassan. I think there's an aspect there which is massively important. If you're with anyone else, as long as you're in a slightly permissive environment where it's not this horrible tyrant that's saying like, oh, you're off to the gulag with you, you had wrong think. Because the Yogscast, they do have this fairly, like, they've sort of been purity spiraling a little bit, but there's still, you can talk a little bit at least. And what happens if you interact with other people on a regular basis is it's harder to go off on crazy tangents because you have someone to rein you in and be like, that's crazy. What are you talking about? And you're like, oh yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, right. I forgot because I was streaming by myself for 8 hours a day for 3 months.
Yeah.
I forgot that communism is crazy. Sorry. It was just, I was interacting with lunatics in a chat room who might not even believe what they're saying and are just there to have some laughs. They're like I find myself when I write in a chat being hyperbolic and being over the top and being sometimes mean, and I'm like, whoa.
No, definitely.
But it's also like, wait, do I believe that? Or it's like, okay, I don't quite believe that, but the sentence to express my nuance would be like 2 paragraphs. So I'm just going to say, you're wrong, you're crazy.
So during the finals of Hidden Cup, I went into the Twitch chat to type 14, which is start the game already. And a bunch of people are spamming at one point T90 snaps, like, children, behave yourselves. It takes time. And it was like, haha, this is goofy. Let's all type 14 in there.
Yeah. The YouTube chat for Hidden Cup was observed, because you could see the Twitch chat in the YouTube chat. And we were observing that they were like a hive mind. Like, it was creepy how they would all, like, you know when you see a flock of birds swarm in one direction then another?
Yeah.
We were seeing that with the Twitch chat.
Yeah, well, so I was watching on YouTube, but I went to Twitch chat just to type 14 in, because it's the one that gets to be seen. And I was like, haha, funny, 14.
Yeah.
But it's like, if I was at at live tournament and I was there in person, I wouldn't just shout, start the game already! Come on, we're just sitting here waiting!
Because the person beside you'd be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the other person, it's having people around you. It's not just, let's say, to be fair, it's not just this loneliness mitigation. It's also like a sanity check. It's like,
a sanity check, and it's also 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 is different than 1. If that, like, all right, think about this metaphorically and not mathematically, right? So if you have a number 1 and you have a number 1, if you put the number 1 and the number 1 together, it becomes 2. It's not a 1 and a 1 next to each other. That's total value equals 2. 2 is a different shape than 1.
But they're just abstract representations of accounting. No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I have had conversations, though, where I was trying to explain that an ace could be worth 11, but also be small, but also have a value of 1. And people are like, no, it has to be 1 or 11. It can't be both numbers at the same time. I was like, just roll with me here.
Yeah.
The 2 is bigger than the 1, but the 1 is worth 11. Just roll with me.
Yeah, so it's...
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Actually, a better way to describe this is, right, you got eggs and you got flour, okay?
Yeah.
Crack an egg, you put it in a frying pan, you cook it.
You get a fried egg.
You put flour in a frying pan, you cook
get
it.
Fire.
You crack an egg and you mix it with the flour and you put it in a frying pan.
You get pancakes.
Yes.
But if you combine fried eggs with a fire, you don't get pancakes.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so having another streamer there gives you pancakes.
You don't just get a fire, you get a fireball, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having another streamer there gives you pancakes.
Yeah.
That's the point I was making.
Yeah. Yeah. The
whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
A man, a plan, a canal, Panama.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was actually really disappointed by it. Complete tangent. Panama, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was a carving straight through.
Okay.
It isn't.
It's not?
No. It's...
well, it's a series of locks above a mountain, right?
Yeah, it's a bunch of locks that lead to 2 different lakes.
Yeah, but it's still like a stream, right?
I thought they cut a country in half.
Well, they kind of did. Like,
but I thought you could just take a boat and go whoop, 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 straight through.
Well, you can. It just takes a while because of the locks.
Yeah, the locks really disappointed me.
Oh. But what if they didn't have the locks? The ocean would drain into the other ocean.
That's fine. And no one...
They might. I don't know. Well, like, how does...
Anyways, I recently found out it was a bunch of locks, and that disappointed me.
I don't know, though, actually. That's how rivers work, right? You have a higher... Like, if one of the oceans is higher than the other, it might actually drain into the other. But then there's also the effect of gravity on the globe as a whole, where the ocean can be bulgy.
Yeah.
So, I think it would create a river, though. I'm not sure.
It would create a river that might balance out? But even then, imagine you're shipping lane, you put a boat in there, it goes shoom!
Yeah, it'd be like Yu Sun Shin and the Strait of whatever all over again.
Yeah.
So,
cringy poetry?
Yeah, I'm wondering if this should be a separate episode or
well,
just...
to explain my plans to you. So the talking about the T90 and the 14 is to tie that in so I can take that whole section and actually load it at the back.
Okay.
So it conceptually
Well,
makes
if you're
sense.
figuring it out, then I'll just talk, and then you can make 2 episodes or 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's,
But that's why, because I want to front load with the depressing mess of a web and then have Age of...
Empires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to get through all the Ghibli goop to get to the video gaming.
Oh, rough. Okay, so, well, maybe this will be the bridging gap. So I've been cleaning my room lately, and it's been, actually it kind of relates to what we were talking about before.
I was cleaning my room and I found a piece of writing about me ranting that I'm not gay.
What's that thing called? Like denial or something? Like, it just sounds like overcompensating.
It's even worse the subject matter of it. Anyways, continue.
Sounds like overcompensating. Yeah, that's the one. Right, so
I can only find the second half of the writing. I can't find the first half, and I think the first half's really important.
I've been cleaning my room, and it's actually been a massive project. Like, my room was clean before, as in everything was in drawers and every surface was
ordered.
Was dusted. Well, no, I wouldn't say it was ordered, but you go into my room and, you know, there's not stuff on the floor, right? Like, everything's away in drawers, everything's away in closets.
So the dragon's under the carpet.
Sort of, yeah. But I think most people would count it as a clean room.
Yeah.
But what I've been doing is I want it so that I can access all of my stuff instantly at any time. So you can't have piles of stuff. Like, the drawer has to have only the one object in it per drawer type of thing. Right?
Yeah.
And
or a bunch of little objects stacked together that you can reach in and pull out.
Yeah, and I have to know where everything is. So it's like, okay, where is this piece of writing? It's in that series of file folders. Go through it, and it's this one. Bam, it's that file. So I've been filing a ton of papers, but so that's exhausting on its own. And also, I've had to get rid of a ton of stuff in my room because I just don't have the room to store that information, to store less stuff. I had to take down an entire giant hanging basket that was hung up in my closet.
Yeah.
And in doing so, which was a lot of work on its own, I discovered I have an air vent in my room, which has probably been covered for like 13 years. And suddenly, my energy levels went up a bit. And also, I don't like wake up in the middle of the night and run over to my window and open it and like gasp out and take breaths anymore. So, you know, you're sort of copyright infringing upon my depression, but I copyright infringe on your lack of oxygen. So
okay, even so.
So take that, yeah. And I'm also finding I don't.
I'm sorry, you did the depression when it's cool. I'm just the younger brother.
Yeah.
Copying the cool older brother.
Yeah, exactly. My hipster bone is just aching right now. But
you described that actually as narcissism. That's my thing. Like when you talked about with the video games 2 podcasts ago.
Oh yeah. Where
this video game becoming cool, like Dominion 6 becoming cool.
Yeah. My hipster narcissism was aching or something.
Yeah.
And I've also found I need to go for less walks. Like before I'd be like, I need to go on a walk before I can think. Yeah. And then it's like, you know, I go on a walk, sure, but it's not like the air is that much fresher.
Yeah.
Because apparently the vent was actually doing a whole lot. And there's like this cold breeze now that comes, like it actually is like a strong vent. It's like,
yeah.
And before jeez. So I've had that entire hanging basket I've had to get rid of, which means I have way less space in my room now because I don't have this entire massive container.
Yeah.
So I got rid of that, and I've been doing all this stuff, and so that's hard on its own. But then there's this also hard part of I've got these massive stacks of paper, and I have to figure out which pieces of paper are valuable and where each of them belongs. And so I found just some stuff from college, which I didn't think was valuable. But what's interesting is I've been seeing writing from basically from the time I began writing to now. I have all of it stored basically. And what's interesting is, you know, my writing until I'm like 10 or so is like, it's not great. You know, it's a 10-year-old's writing, right?
Yeah.
And then my writing from like 10 to like 14 is actually really good. And then it turns into this garbage, which lasted until, I don't know, last week. I'm not sure. I'd have to look back at some of my more recent writings.
Flopsy prose with drawings?
No, it's like, it was like poisonous. Like it's, no, the drawings are awesome. What are you talking about? Look at that frog. This is an example of, I think I was trying to draw epigenetic sort of thing here. These are probably sociology notes. I got really distracted in those classes. So,
I like the crossbill on that bird.
Yeah, it's a bit extreme. So what this is it's...
Okay, so the Doomer, right? That's going to be the thumbnail.
Yeah.
I'm going to take pictures of those, and he is going to be drawing them.
All right, well, I'll have to give them to you then. I was going to throw them into the recycling, so you can have them if you wanted to do that for the thumbnail.
Oh, the problem is thumbnails are actually relatively low resolution, so probably won't turn.
It'd be kind of a neat little abstract, maybe. I don't know. So I went to college 2013 to 2015, and I thought it was fairly normal. The SJW stuff hadn't quite infiltrated all the way then. There was some stuff like I was asked to take a vow not to hurt women, and I was like, what the hell is what?
I vow that I shall harm every woman I see.
But it was actually super insulting. Like, it was like, wait, you think that was an option? I have to wear a badge that says I'm not going to hurt women? Like, that seems kind of messed up.
My mama raised me better than that.
So I didn't, so there was some stuff I noticed. But I was like, it was mostly normal. We had a class where they talked about trans people, and the teacher was like, yeah, it's really interesting, but I which one's which? Like, is the trans woman the one where they were a man and then a woman, or is it the other way around? And, like, nobody knew. So it was that sort of level of stuff, right? The sort of well-meaning United Church group.
Yeah.
That's that sort of thing. Well, 5 years ago. Now they're cultists.
It's a bunch of old hippies that are trying to be hip and with it.
Yeah.
But they're not certain. Like, the population of Whitehorse.
They don't realize that they've actually...
drinking from a poison chalice.
Or no, they don't realize this is a planting religion. They don't realize that this is actually an ideology. Like, I've heard people say, well, how could anyone be opposed to a rainbow sidewalk? Like, that's just fun and it's nice and it shows inclusivity. And it's like, no, that is swearing allegiance to a new religion. That is a conquering religion. Yeah. It's an imperialistic faith. It's not Shintoism. It's not...
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine if someone said, well, why would anyone be opposed to just, like, crosses on every street corner and, like, cross sidewalks? It's like, that's because you would look like you're some sort of Christian theocracy.
Oh, sorry.
It'd be terrifying.
It would be.
It'd be like Romans after a slave... It'd be like you're in Rome after a slave revolt or something. But,
you see, when I was playing Sea of Thieves, I had you can design your own ship. Like, you have a bunch of cosmetics, so you can choose your hull, you can choose your sails, and I actually have this ship aesthetic I really liked. And it was this big, scary, like, it's this dark red wood with, like, these black things, and there's these deep red, like, no lacquered red paint. Yeah. And so, like, these roses everywhere on it, and there's these taste of gold. Add this flag up.
Tasticles?
Taste of gold. Like these...
A touch of gold?
A touch of gold. These flares of gold. Anyways,
I grafted my tongue onto my balls. I call them my tasticles.
The tasticles will become more apparent, especially with apparently my writing of self-denial. So you can have this little flag on the top of your ship, right?
Yeah.
And so I had this flag that matched the aesthetic called tastes,
right,
of the ship. And my friends were playing with me, and you can't really modify the captain's ship at all, if it's the captain's ship, which it was, but you can mess around with their flag up top. So one of them went and changed the flag to a gay pride flag. And it's, why did you change the flag? It's, it's just what it's done.
Yeah.
I went up and changed it back. It's like, don't touch my flag. And then at a different point, we're playing this game, and when you log in, you can have like this, basically a banner shows up, and there's a bunch of different design banners. And all the people I was playing with had like either like trans flags or gay pride flags. And I did have, and I was like, what, Connor, you're not like supportive of gay pride? I like this design more.
Allow me to show you my 20-word strongly worded essay on why I am
not okay. No, but what you're saying about the conquering religion is like the thought of the sidewalk or whatever, where it's like, why aren't you...
I saw Henry Cavill shirtless and was only slightly aroused. Super straight.
No, I was thinking about the Captain America scene where he's holding the helicopter and flexing. I was only attracted to him and nothing else, right? Where I was getting at is I already have a religion, and it's not that one. It's like the ideology of like, why I don't like this stripy crossing or like, wear this pin or whatever, is, well, I don't go about wearing a cross. But if I was going to wear a symbol, I'd go about wearing a cross.
Yeah.
I already have a religion. I already have a faith I'm sworn to. I'm not going to swear to yours. I'm already like hardly sworn to my religion as it is. I'm a heretic, but I'm not going to go that far.
If I was going to wear anything, I'd wear a yin-yang if I hadn't already taped my tongue to it.
Yes.
So that's what the kids call the tasticles. They call them your yin yang.
Slurring's fun.
So my college stuff, right? You know, normal college, whatever. So here is 2 sets of notes, and there was another which I didn't keep track of, but it was 5 reasons for neglect of native literature. European cultural arrogance. Number 2, European antipathy and prejudice towards oral literatures. 3, European belief that idealizes vanishing races. The purist attitude of Western literary critics towards literature that does not conform totally to their aesthetic criteria. And 5, the difficult problem of translating native literature. I'm sure that one doesn't matter nearly as much as imperial cultural arrogance. And so it's like, holy cow, I wrote this? Like, this is the reasons for the neglect of native literature. Now, this was probably on a test, and I had to remember them, right? But it's like, this is propaganda they're teaching you. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many reasons that native literature wouldn't be around, right?
Well, that's...
Like, it's difficult to transcribe oral traditions.
Sorry, the very first one of imperial cultural arrogance.
Yeah.
It's not arrogance if it's better.
Well, but I think with native literature, right, like, storytelling is everyone has great stories. And, but this is like, Europeans are racist and arrogant. And it's like, some of them, but I don't think that is why, like, first of all, there's way less natives than there are Europeans. So the Europeans are going to win out. And then this purist attitude, why was the West so obsessed with, well, first of all, with the East, but then also the noble savage? Wouldn't they love to hear the writings of the noble savage?
Yeah.
And, like, it's difficult to translate, yeah. Like, Cree was used during World War II because you can't translate it.
Yeah.
It's, like, crazy difficult. So, like, it has different conjugations based on where you are standing and where the subject is standing.
Really?
Yeah, so if you're standing in the ocean, your vocabulary changes than if you're standing on land. But also, if your subject is on an island versus in water, then how you talk about them also changes. So, you know, respect my pronouns. Respect my island-bound pronouns while you're in the water pronouns.
So, if I'm standing on a north-facing hill and you're standing down in a valley...
Yeah, I don't know how extreme it gets, but yeah, it's...
Sorry, I'm just trying to...
So when they were trying to do code breaking, it's like, well, this is totally different.
I'm just thinking about the poor dyslexic Cree kids.
Well, they didn't have writing.
Yeah.
So, might have helped. There is actually a Cree written language, which is really interesting how it's done. There was some great big Cree thinker dude.
Yeah.
You know, like the Cree version of Tolkien, I guess. Yeah, Tolkien's a pretty good example, actually. And he had a Bible, I think it was. And he's like, all right, here's the alphabet. And so I'm going to make words based on these. And so he took the letters and he would, like, draw little extra doodads onto them and be like, all right, this word means tree. And so this, like, he invented it just from... Huh. It's kind of like how Korean was invented, where he saw Chinese characters and it's like, that's how you make a language. Okay, then we'll do that. But it was more random and less constructed like the Korean language. So yeah, there's just this, like, anti-imperial propaganda here, which makes my British soul bleed. But no, it's actually, like, just racist.
Actually, something interesting on the British soul bleed, though. This is important. I watched a video recently. It's a short video, but a guy is having this interview of why is Canada so woke. And it's this interesting thing I didn't know about, which is the Canadian identity is, before World War II, the Canadian identity was British. We were loyal to the British Crown. Canada was made out of loyalists. That's what Canada was. Like, there's the weirdo French guys. That's actually probably part of why we have a cultural divide still, is there's the weirdo Frenches. But the Canadians were British. That was our identity. We were loyalists. We weren't Americans. We were loyalists. We stayed true to the crown. Yeah.
And the Americans that stayed true to the crown fled to Canada.
Yeah. And most of the people in Canada at that time were British. Like, there was a few French people, but the vast majority, like 91% were British and like 8% were French. And then, like, there's the margin of basically everyone else that's in Canada. And so when I don't know why actually, but the decline of the British Empire and we left the British Empire, the Canadian identity was destroyed. The cultural identity of Canada was actually destroyed in the 60s or 40s. After World War II, it was the 60s.
The war ended in 1945.
Yeah.
So it would have been the 50s or 60s, yeah.
Yeah, but the Canadian identity was destroyed by that. because we were no longer loyal to the British Crown. That was Canada's identity, actually.
Like, we're still in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, we're still in Commonwealth, but it took a big hit. And so the government came up with this idea of the Canadian identity is immigrants, and we're a bunch of people who came to this land.
This melting pot, yeah.
Yeah, and that became the Canadian identity. However, when that started, Canada was like 90% British.
Like, obviously we've got a strong Chinese influence and a strong Ukrainian influence and a strong Irish and Scottish influence.
Yeah.
But,
well, they joined much later, actually, the Scottish and Irish.
yeah, the Ukrainians joined before World War One, I believe.
Yeah. But there was still a very small amount of people compared to just how many British people there were in Canada.
Yeah.
And so, like, Canadian identity is really weird. And so, like, you're saying you're British soul, but Canada actually was the British soul. We are the people who have come to this new land, and we hold this land for the British Crown. And if they call for us, we're there. We're Canada. We are the servants and the loyal people of Britannia. Britannia, like the king, the crown, that was what we were there for. And then that was gone.
Yeah, well, I've always thought of us as, like, basically British.
Yeah.
With a, maybe
with like a Frenchman eating our feet.
well, with like a, with a very strong, like, we're such a big country. I don't think the French and the Newfies actually...
Yeah. Well,
what's a word that means taint, but like in a good way?
Influence?
Influence the culture.
Well, I mean, the French deal with their multicultural laws and all their legislating.
Yeah, we know a lot of French because it's all in all the cereal boxes and all the packages.
And they're legislating laws.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it gives us even more British culture that we get to hate the French.
I didn't think I knew a lot of French until I heard an American trying to talk about French and like Quebec's history.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, because Americans and Canadians are so similar. You're like, yeah, we know all the same stuff. But then I saw this American trying to talk about Quebec, and I was like, oh, they have no clue.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, so is Canada still part of the Crown, or is it? Are they independent, or did? Or no, they were founded by France, right? They're a French country, and it's like, wow, they have no clue, or at least that guy didn't.
Yeah.
But so we know a bunch of French. But then, like, Newfoundland, they're very, they're like Scottish pirates, sort of, like, but they're because they were their own country for a while.
Yeah.
And they're very strongly different. Canada's actually interesting. It's it's like Russia in a way, actually, where we have
a federation.
Yeah, but we talked about it before, but it's actually like Quebec, Newfoundland, the Yukon, Alberta, BC to a lesser extent. They're all like kind of independent cultures and histories and nations.
Well, Northwest Territory.
Yeah, well, they're they're much more traditional. Like, they remained native a lot more than the other places.
The two other territories.
Yeah, Nunavut and NWT.
What about Manitoba?
They're in the center of Canada, along with the other ones. Saskatchewan and...
What's it called?
Ontario? I guess Ontario's like... Yeah. Well, Ontario I'm going to include in the general sort of bland milieu, because they do have, like, the capital and Toronto in them, but it's like, those are their own things.
Yeah.
Those are just cosmopolitan city culture. Like you compare them to New York or to London, and it's like they're city culture.
Yeah.
And they're not even like Tokyo city culture. Like there's like the cosmopolitan city culture where it's like, it doesn't matter where in the world you are, they're just city people.
And they keep coming here and making it so we have more streetlights.
Whereas Tokyo is a bit different because Tokyo is still Japanese.
Yeah.
But like Hong Kong is another cosmopolitan city.
Yeah.
Where they're not really Chinese. They're more
city folk.
The city people, yeah. Yeah, so that was
I mean, that might just be our perspective on city folk. Like, maybe like one city folk to another city folk is actually a very big different culture, and then all the countryside are country bumpkins, and they view them as that's country bumpkin culture.
Probably. But the difference being that the city folk are wrong and we're right. Yeah. I think a lot of like, Canada doesn't have a culture, the United States doesn't have a culture. The kind of people that say that typically left wing, right? Yeah. And typically left wing people live in cities where they're not seen as a unified culture. They see, there's the Koreatown and the Chinatown and the Mardi Gras that we celebrate. And the
Yukon culture, we have this thing called rendezvous.
Yeah,
and rendezvous is the expression of
something. Yeah, keep going. Yeah,
rendezvous is the expression of sort of this old-timey gold rush era It's this really weird era of time with like the fashion and sort of like in between technologies. It's a little bit after the Old West sort of conceptually and feel, and it's very unique up here that they've. It's weird. Growing up, I thought everyone sort of celebrated a rendezvous-like concept, but it's up here. It's basically like old-timey gold rush. We've got like the can girls. We've got the prospector outfits.
You get thrown into jail if you don't have a beard. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very jovial sort of party thing. So I went to Rendezvous this year, and there was no big tent. It's all held inside the Kwanzaa Cultural Center, and then there's like the few outdoor events. It made me really sad not having the big tent. I feel like not having the big tent is a loss of what it is, because the big tent was this massive tent got set up, chairs are put inside, and because it is heated inside but there's snow on the ground, basically the ground turned to mud in there. And it had this sort of like grime feel to it, and that grime feel, like I'm going outside and being cold and going inside is like this bit muddy, bit rustic, is a part of what Rendezvous was to me. Of it's this
grime.
But you go to the Old West, like there's the dusty town, or like
Rendezvous used to be on Main Street,
yeah,
and there was no grime then. You would go into like a bookstore to warm up, and you would be throwing. Now the reason they stopped, I guess, is because for some reason, some whiny, moral busybodies thought throwing chainsaws down the middle of Main Street was somehow a problem with traffic.
Yeah,
just dodge the chainsaw.
Close the traffic.
Well, yeah, they did. They would close it, yeah. But I think what happened, I have a theory, I don't know if this is the case, but I do know that one of the main organizers has moved away, and she had a very large family, and she would rope them all into...
Setting up the tent, probably? Or...
Well, no, to be the managers, basically. So there's like... She was like in charge of everything. So, well, she was in charge of a lot of stuff, and she'd grab a bunch of family members and say, "Okay, you're in charge of this. You're in charge of that."
So one of the movers and shakers of Rendezvous basically.
Yeah. So like half the managing staff just no longer has any reason to.
Because it definitely felt lesser this year to me.
Yeah.
Like there's no sugar shack I could find, and
yeah, that's my theory is because she moved. Because I'm good friends with her family, and I think it's probably because of that.
But anyways,
yeah.
Like there's that sort of cultural loss thing, but like. We have this culture in the White Horse beyond that. Like, tourists come here. They see the Powell Wheeler. It's that era. They go... We have the false front still of you. It's not quite the Old West, but it's like that feeling of the Old West.
We have the highest per capita gang violence in Canada. We get to... Well, you don't really run into it because it's so rare still, but...
and then you can go even further. Like, you can leave Whitehorse and you can go to Dawson.
Yeah, and that's very old-timey.
Yeah, and that's their tourist racket, is they keep it old-timey there.
Yeah, they imported incredibly expensive concrete from India to make it look like their roads were packed dirt when they're actually pavement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but we definitely, like, that's one of the parts of the culture up here, as you're saying, the individual territories and provinces of Canada. We have this sort of like old-timey aesthetic that civilization is a frontier. We have a very frontier aesthetic, and people live here for the frontier of, if you walk out of your house and walk for 10 minutes, you'll be in the forest.
Yeah, what kind of bothers me, actually, is, so it used to be that people would have, like, rifle racks in their trucks, and they would have their rifles in the back and that sort of thing. And you could ride, we didn't have seatbelt laws, and you could ride around in the back of trucks, or you could ride around in the trunk, or wherever you want to go. And no, they're probably a good idea that save lives, like seatbelt laws and whatnot. And it's probably a good idea to not have the rifle racks, just not because, it makes people on edge, but more because you got in a crash with a rifle and maybe you forgot to unload it and who knows what happens. Like, there's reasons I can see. But it kind of bothers me that you have people constantly moving here and saying, oh, that's not safe. We need to change that. That's not like where I'm from. It's...
Well, that's what, like, the streetlights getting installed.
Yeah, it's like, well, did you come to the frontier to be at the frontier, or did you come to the frontier to change it? And if you came here to change it, then maybe you shouldn't be here. You know, that sort of thing. Like I said, with Canada as a whole, we should only allow Canadians to immigrate to Canada.
Yeah.
You want to immigrate to Canada? Down this bottle of maple syrup. I think that would be pretty good, just that test on its own. So you want to be a Canadian, eh? Drink up. And
then they have to say, not bad, eh?
And then they have to...
Wrestle a beaver.
You could die.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. Wrestle a moose. I only know of one case of a guy getting in a scrap with a beaver and he died. So
Yeah.
that's and I don't know anyone that has touched a moose and died. So
Well, actually, here's something else I haven't actually been to much of Canada, but where have I been in Canada?
I've been to Alberta, BC, the
Yeah.
Yukon.
Yeah. So you hear about like, oh, Texas friendly. That's a thing in the States of like you smile and wave at people and you give them nods. Everywhere I've been in Canada, you smile and wave at people and give them nods. It's with a lot of men. It's this unspoken thing of basically men in Canada that I've interacted with. You walk by someone, and if you like catch their eye or whatever, you just give them a nod.
Yeah.
And they give you a nod back. And apparently, in parts of the States, like if you were to do that in New York, you'd get mugged for doing stuff or like smiling.
Or in Scandinavia, you'd freak the people out.
Yeah. And so even that's like, I don't know about the rest of Canada, but the parts I've experienced, which is, I guess, the west of Canada, is kind of this like subtle, respectful friendliness.
I think the East is supposed to be famous for hospitality. So,
Okay, yeah. So if they're have that as well, then that's a part of Canadian culture. Is Canadian culture is you give a little wave or you give a smile or give a nod.
I think they have the old like set an extra spot in Newfoundland, possibly.
Yeah, well, that's the extreme one. It's like, oh, a traveler comes by, you have
Yeah. Okay, so going back to college and not realizing there was like... So, see, if I had in college been told like, wow, that's some pretty like far left indoctrination, I'd be like, what? No, it's not. Don't be ridiculous. Like, there's nothing going on there, right? Like, I wouldn't have thought about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what goes on is when you have these arguments, people are like, what? No, there's nothing going on. So, there was another one I had. It was this list of things you could do to to save the world that would take almost no effort at all.
Yeah.
And I only had one item on the list, and it was stop the production of meat. And, you know, it'd be more energy efficient, and you'd prevent a lot of animal suffering probably, with like factory farms and whatnot. Factory farms are horrible. I hope we can get rid of those very soon, because they are horrible. But they're horrible not only to the animals, horrible to the workers, and they're horrible to the health of the final product. Like, the meat you get from there is not going to be nearly as healthy, and it can cause problems on its own. Like, that's why mad cow disease becomes a thing. Yeah. And that's why the Atlantic cod nearly died out because of the fish farming.
Well, it's ironic because I was in Alberta, but when I was in Alberta for university, we lived very near the States, and so I would go shopping at the grocery store, and because of the way I'd like get organic meat or whatever. There was a cafeteria at the university, and I bought a burger there one time, and it's like, okay, I want to try the burger they have here, and it was disgusting. Like, everything was good quality except the meat.
Yeah.
I don't know what was going on with that meat. It might be just being meat that day, but it was so like there's something wrong with the meat. And when I go to the cafeteria, I'd like smell that wrongness in the meat there, and so their quality on the meat, like I felt sick after eating that burger, and like you could just smell that quality, and something was off about that being in the cafeteria.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is an easy way to save the world. But first of all, we don't need more food. We have enough. We have the energy. Like, you know, the amount of land taken up to farming maybe is too much right now, let's say, but we are producing enough. We don't need a solution. And then what are the costs of getting rid of meat? It's more than people saying, oh, but I like my meat. It's like, you might cause some serious disorders because you have to turn to something else. You have to turn to nuts. You have to turn to fats. You have to turn to oils. You have to turn and
soy.
Yeah, those can cause all sorts of problems. Mm-hmm. And it depends on the person. And there's some people, you know, that find now, I think there's probably other things they could do, but there's people that find they can only eat meat, and it solves like arthritis and stuff for them. And so it's not a simple solution, but I was like, oh yeah, simple solution. So this one here then is culturally induced stress. So as an example, women equal in work, but supposed to do other general roles in addition. This reinforces the cycles of the wage gap between men and women. So the idea is that, you know, women are now working in the workforce as much, but they also have to clean at home, and therefore they can't perform as much at their job potentially, and so that causes them to make less money, and therefore they're seen as less valuable, and so on and so on. And so there's the wage gap between men and women. It's a great theory, really, but look at the stats, and men work like on average now, I think it's like 4 hours more than women a week, maybe it's 3 hours, and women do like an hour and a half to 2 to 3 hours more housework than men. So it's basically the same.
Yeah.
It's basically they work roughly the same, women maybe a bit less, and then they do about the same housework, women maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
So now I'm sure, we talked about the two income trap before. Where if you look at a couple, they're probably doing more work overall than they were before.
Yeah.
So there is something bad there, but it's just like, oh yeah, here's the wage gap. Obvious. Bing, bang, boom. It's a thing. And here's, you need to stop eating meat. And here's, now if you think, wow, what a fool. Why would you ever want to stop eating meat? And what's factory farms aren't so bad. There's a documentary I recommend to people thinking that, which is called Earthlings. And if you can watch that and eat meat that same day, I'd be impressed in a way. But also, you might be a psychopath.
It's funny.
Like there's footage where they don't look away of like dogs and trash compactors.
Yeah.
And pigs getting nail gunned repeatedly and not dying.
Yeah.
And it's horrible.
It wasn't that documentary. That sounds awful. But
no, this is probably the worst. It is the worst I've ever seen. Yeah. There might be worse out there, but I hope not.
In our philosophy class, it's funny. We had our teacher was vegetarian.
Yeah.
And he would, as a part of the philosophy class, talk about his vegetarianism and why his philosophy was based on that. And he had us watch a documentary about like factory farming and all that stuff and different practices and things. And what was great about that philosophy class is a lot of people still, even after like watching that documentary, pushed back against the like, oh, you should be a vegetarian, because they said, well, we don't have to factory farm. Like, a lot of people up here are hunters, and they get something that would be taken down by a wolf or whatever. And so it's just funny. He gave us this documentary. That's what he wanted. He wanted us to push back against it as well.
Yeah.
And say your own reasons why you don't agree. And the interesting conclusion was of there was two conclusions, sort of three. One is animals are sentient, so we can't eat them.
Yeah.
The other is animals aren't sentient, so we can eat them. And then mine was animals might be sentient, and we can eat them. There wasn't a because.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I often think, like, first of all, people put way too much value on life. Like they say, we've got to save all lives matter. It's like, no, sometimes people got to die. Yeah. And on top of that, like, a tiger is a sentient being, and it doesn't care when it attacks a person. Right? Like, I think there's this idea, let's say there was orcs on Earth, and they weren't like a split off of humans. They were like a sentient fungus.
Yeah.
Like, they were
lads.
They were a giant truffle.
Yeah.
A delicious truffle. I'm not sure if hunting and eating them would be bad or not. Like,
well, this was really weird for me. So when we were playing the campaign of the Dungeon Mad Mage, I was playing a fairy.
But you're not gay.
No. Okay. So there's this area where if you enter it, a god curses you. And it's a random curse. And the curse that gave the fairy was basically everything in the world's your prey. So your brain gets messed up, everything in the world's prey. And we encountered a group...
Tinkerbell's 9 on your arm.
Well, no, we encountered a group of dark elves, and we killed the dark elves, and it's trying to suggest like something's wrong with her. And so she started eating one of the dark elves. And I was thinking about this and like, why am I not disturbed by this? Because I'm really disturbed by cannibalism.
Yeah.
And it was twofold. One, this is a dark elf that she's eating. Two, she's a fairy. And they're not similar species. It's like she's a foot tall, little vicious predator creature with like sharp teeth.
Now there is something I want to add to this, I think. Like, I'm not sure if hunting an orc and eating it would be bad, right?
Yeah.
But I do think having an orc on a farm or even a ranch, and especially not a factory farm, I think that would be messed up.
Yeah.
Like, I think ranching pigs is kind of messed up already. But not ranching pigs, sorry, farming pigs. Like, not a factory farm, just like you have them on a small lot or something.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of messed up. And like, I was thinking about elephants, right? That's probably the closest I can think of equivalent to orcs. Where
whales?
You're not... Yeah, maybe whales too. You're not really going to hunt a whale, I guess. But I guess you can. But yeah, whales and elephants. And, if you're in a tribe and your tribe needs food, you go out and you hunt an elephant, you're like, yeah, sure. But if you got a machine gun and you're just going to your elephant ranch and mowing down elephants, that seems messed up to me. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you have a pheasant ranch, maybe it's not as messed up to be machine gunning the pheasants.
So on the same...
But I think you need... The thing our teacher beat into us when we were in elementary school, was, the pictures of the hunter with... When you take a picture when you're a hunter, you show the hunter, you show the weapon, you show the prey. You do not have your foot up on the prey's head. You do not any of that. You do not show dominance over it. You say, here's the prey, here I am, here's the weapon.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. And so I think you do need respect at all levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ender's Game, I didn't know about this. So I recently learned about this. So the Formics, the bugs, when they attacked Earth, they didn't understand what people were.
Yeah, they didn't think they were sentient.
They thought they were ants.
Yeah.
And similar, almost like...
They thought that they had a hive queen somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so killing the individual bits, like whatever.
Yeah. When the Formic queens would squabble with each other, they'd go and like bomb each other's planets, and it was more like trolling.
Yeah.
It was like, I killed some of your people on your planet, because the people had no minds. They were controlling all of them at once. So it was more like punching someone lightly on the arm.
Yeah.
And so they see humans and they're like, I wonder who this is. Let's give them a little wake-up shot and we'll just punch them on the arm. And they didn't realize they just killed the equivalent of like 1 million queens.
Yeah.
And they only had 6 queens in total. And they're like, we just caused a genocide. It would be like if us right now killed off a sentient species of like 1 trillion.
Yeah.
Like, or like on a scale that's, way more than 1 trillion.
Yeah.
Like a quintillion.
Very big number.
But like there's 8 of them.
Yeah.
And they killed millions.
Yeah, and so they were horrified when they actually figured it out.
Yeah.
But at that point, when they figured out and the humans were fighting them, the war had gone too far, and then the humans did absolute retaliation and killed most of them.
Well, the in the later books, like Speaker for the Dead, it turns out that they actually basically committed suicide. The Formics, like
they were so messed up by what they did to humans.
Like they didn't kill themselves, but they let the humans kill them.
So they're just basically like, we accept this.
Yeah, because they're like, look what we did. This is messed up.
Okay.
Yeah. Book after Speaker for the Dead. Whatever it's called. They discover a cave with like a preserved Formic queen in it, I believe.
Yeah.
And like a princess, I guess, and they're not able to resurrect it, but I think they carry it around with them, and then the series continues after that.
Yeah.
Where they meet the species that communicates through viruses.
Yeah. But just back to the Formics, like so different mentally, and then
the piggies.
Yeah.
They slaughter people. Like so they're this peaceful species and they get along great with people, and then the humans they respect most, just in the middle of the night they'll capture them and they'll disembowel them and ritually slaughter them, and they're like, what does...
Well, there's an anime. It's actually amazing, and like the comics are quite good, the manga, but the anime is also really good, and it's called Farron's Journey's End. So there's this trope in anime of a group of heroes are assembled and they fight the Demon King. You've probably encountered that in the light novel stuff you might have read of the reincarnated.
Yeah.
So in Farron's Journey End, it starts with the party has defeated the Demon King and they're going back to town to celebrate. Main character is Farron, and she's an elf. And it basically reflects on elves live forever and humans don't. And so she's in the capital with the hero, and they're talking, so where all the things are going to do, and the priest's like, I'm going to go do this thing, they're warriors, dwarfs, like, I'm going to keep training people, and the hero's like, I'm just going to keep helping people and help out this town. It's like, what are you going to do, Farron's like, oh no, I'll wander about for a bit and continue to look for magic. And she leaves afterwards from the capital, and she's going through her life, and just shows her going through things, and she comes to this magic shop, like, hey, do you have any black dragon horn? And the shopkeeper's like, oh, those things went extinct 50 years ago after Demon King was defeated. It's like, I remember giving one of those horns to the hero. And so she goes back to the hero Himmel. And it's like, and he's this old man. It's like, I knew I'd see you again one time. And he's really happy to see her again. And so, do you have that dragon? It's like, I held on to it all these years for you because I knew you'd want it. And then he dies because he's an old man. And she's at his funerals. I didn't know anything about him. I spent 10 years of my life with him. And influenced my whole life. I know nothing about this guy. So the rest of the series is her exploring her feelings and following their journey again. And it's one of the best depictions of elves ever. Of they're these immortals, and she's realizing she loved him, and that he loved her, but he was kind of too shy and respected her. It's like, she's immortal, so if she doesn't show any feelings back, what am I to do? But in it, there are demons, and demons are monsters that evolved to speak like humans to deceive people. And there's this great scene where it's one of her flashbacks, and she's there with the hero Himmel, and they've killed a bunch of demons, and there's this little demon child. And they're like, oh, we should kill it. And the hero Himmel's like, no, we can't kill it, it's just a child. And she said the word mama. And it's like, we can't kill her, she lost her mother, we have to take care of her. And then later on they're staying in the village, and the demon child burns down the village's house, kills him and like someone else to give their daughter to like reciprocate the pain of letting her live. And him will ask her, "Why did you say the word mother?" And he was like, "It's this magical word that makes humans stop hurting you. I have no idea what it means." And so he kills her. And then at a different point, there's another demon that uses the word father, and another demon's like, "What does the word father mean?" "I have no idea, but when you say it, humans do what you want." And so demons have no concept of family. They have no concept of malice. It's, we need to eat humans for sustenance, so we'll do it. And they can be really nasty in how they do it, but it's not in their emotions. One of the big plot points, spoilers I guess, from the manga later on, is there's this demon who was a servant of a human lord. And it's basically humans and demons cannot get along. It's not possible. But this guy was a servant of this kingdom for 50 years, this demon. And then he suddenly just seemed to one day snap, and he killed everyone. And so he had this magic collar, and he had to serve the king, and he had to show no malice towards anyone. That was the 2 rules in it. And so they basically go and they check to see if the collar's still working, because they thought it was deactivated, so they're going to try to reactivate it. Magic never stopped. They have no concept of malice. It's just, you are food, I'm going to kill you and eat you. That was just in their mind. So they're sentient beings, but their basis of morality is so different from humans that they're not compatible. And so humans have to kill all demons. They don't work.
Yeah. And
they can't. They actually can't work together.
And by that same token, if a human just kills a demon on sight, maybe they're justified.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll wrap it up there.